John is here. I just had to promote him to a panelist.
Okay.
Kayla, Joe is also coming over as
Oh,
a.
excellent.
There you go. Now
And I
you're,
think that's it that's all we're expecting, right?
yes.
Okay. Great. Well, we'll get started. Busy night. So I'd like to open the Inland Wetlands Agency meeting of December 6th at 7:02 p.m. We have a public hearing at 7:30, but we can start with our regular meeting agenda items. I do have a quick question. Did you all see my email earlier?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I did.
Well, we could, one thing I had said is we could move, and John, Delora, I don't know, and Aaron, I guess, does it make sense to make a motion to move those section 13s to the end?
Yeah, you could do that.
Okay. But like, how do we do that? Do we just say we're doing that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Sure. Someone could make a motion to
Yeah.
rearrange the agenda.
Okay.
I move we rearrange the agenda and put the section 13s at the end.
Great.
Second.
Excellent. Okay. That'll just help streamline things. All in favor of this? Raise your hand. Aye. Okay. Excellent. Okay, now we can start. So our first agenda item is application 21-27, 77 Joshua Trail. This is, just to refresh your memory, this is an application to take down dying and dead ash trees. And what we asked of the applicant last time was a letter from the arborist, which we have received. Are there questions? Does the agency have questions for the applicant? I have a few questions, but I'd like, you guys can go first.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. No questions? All right, I'm gonna pull up the letter. Among all the letters I have. I guess what I did is I looked at our minutes from the last time, and you know, we asked for specific information, and your arborist mostly provided that. What wasn't there, I don't think, is the average height. We asked for the average height of the 12 trees. And you know, it was pretty brief on the reasons for the trees to come out. It sounds like some of them aren't dying or aren't dead. But I just wanted to confirm with you if well, that they are dying and dead. Your arborist was very brief in his.
Kayla, would you like me to share that letter on the screen?
Yeah, that'd be
Is that
great.
helpful? Sure.
Okay, so we have the larger trees are a threat to the volleyball court because the trees are dead. So clearly that is an issue. Some show signs of disease and will eventually die. I guess that was I guess that was a little vague because signs of disease and will eventually die are not, um, that could be a whole range of diseased tree. It could be years, it could be tomorrow. And I know we've seen some of the trees. So I guess it's great we have this letter. I wish it had been more um, detailed with respect to the trees and why they need to come out. Um, I don't, I guess since we've gone over this before, it'll be, you're not an arborist, so I guess asking, I guess, that's what we wanted your arborist to do. But uh, are there, given that, we asked for specific information, we got most of it. Um, how do the agency members feel about this tree removal?
Oh, Affordable Tree is a tree company. They're not an arborist. They're the people that are going to take the tree down. Now, I have a tree on my front lawn and somebody says it's a disease and it's going to last about 15 years. So again, Affordable Tree is not an arborist.
Okay, right. And I guess that was except he just, but the person who's the person who signed the letter does say he's an arborist. He provided his license number, so he is a licensed arborist.
I apologize. I haven't been out there to see him. I know we saw some photographs before, but John you've been out there, I assume, right? Is it a fair description of the condition of the trees out there? I'm asking you to do maybe my work, but.
Well, no, I went out there. There are a couple that are obviously dead. You can tell because there's no canopy.
Right.
There were some that the bark, did look like it was diseased. But quite frankly, I can't tell you if there were 12 trees or 6 trees that needed to be taken down. I know some of them may have imposed a threat to the owner, whether they were diseased or whether they were just desired to be removed. I'd have to leave that up to the arborist. I'm not sure that as many trees as are noted were affected to the point where they would have to come down immediately. But that's just my unprofessional opinion.
Well, and I don't know as far as timing, but would it be worth you calling the arborist and just asking them, saying that we got this letter, but it's not very clear? I don't know whether that's proper protocol or not, but.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Lee. I think even in the last meeting, I showed some reluctance that this was going to actually happen because the arborist that I spoke with that is with the tree company wasn't really proactive to even write a letter. I think he did it because we mentioned it at the last meeting, and I think Mr. Long, asked him to provide it. So he did, basically as much as he was going to do. I think if I've asked him a couple of times, and I think this is about what he wants to commit himself, to. Other than the fact that last meeting I suggested that if the arborist for this firm, not the firm could still do the work, but if the arborist was reluctant to diagnose the trees and the status, that a second or an option would be to have a different arborist come in and evaluate the trees. So you'd have two reports based on the condition of the trees.
Yeah, because I feel like we're being asked to make a decision. We really don't have enough information, I don't think, but I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the letter was, it sounds like there are some definitely dead trees, fine. But the other trees that are referred to as diseased and eventually will die, that's very vague.
Right.
So, right, and I, you know, I'm not an arborist either.
Do we have a time limit, or, I mean, the option that John, or the follow-up that John suggested, sounds like another arborist may be needed then, or something.
Are we at our time limit?
Let's see,
I
we
believe so.
received it. Yeah, we heard it it was a regular meeting agenda in November 1st. So we have 65 days from the date of receipt to hear it. So this, we'd have to get an extension, I think. Aaron, is that right? Do you get that?
Yes,
Yeah.
this would be the last meeting to the 65 days without an extension.
So the option would be to deny it or request Mr. Long give us an extension until he has in time to employ a second arborist to diagnose and report on the condition of the trees.
And with specifics is what we're asking for, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about everybody else, but I'm inclined to deny it unless we get another report, which would require Mr. Long giving us an extension, it sounds like.
Okay.
It's very frustrating to hear all this, guys. I'm sure you know that. Probably deal with someone like me every month that you have to. It's another thing like this, but I mean, we've already had a $6,000 expense bringing a crane into the front of the property to come over the house to pull out a tree that they couldn't get to otherwise. That was a tree that like fell within 5 feet of the house and broke all the concrete around the pool and scratched the whole side of the house. And we didn't even know that thing was in jeopardy of coming down. So we're kind of shell shocked already by, you know, there's several trees, like you've said, that are dead as a doornail, and they've, you know, a third of those trees have already fallen onto the volleyball court or into the wetlands. And so these other trees that an arborist is saying are diseased, I mean, I don't know, you know, there's a lot of us probably sitting on this meeting that are diseased at some point humanly, and hopefully we all live a lot longer as well, but to guess when that's going to happen versus, you know, having, I don't know what to say. I'm just super frustrated by this. It's been going on months and months, and we've already had, you know, a monster tree just miss our house. And these trees are, you know, right along that same line. And I don't know what else to say because I'm just trying to vent a little bit because it's like going on months and months here.
Yeah, and I appreciate that this is frustrating for you. And it's unfortunate that the arborist hasn't committed to being more definitive in his report, because it's not definitive. And I think you probably heard that from several of us tonight.
Is there,
I completely appreciate that, you know, I understand your frustration.
And then
is there a middle ground? I mean, if, again, I haven't been out there. If there's of the 12 trees, if there's 4 or 5 that are clearly diseased and dead, if they're that clear, John, you could see that, right? I mean, is there a middle ground where we could approve the removal of the ones that are clearly dead and then just are diseased, and then the ones that aren't, or John has any concerns that they're not, those can't come out unless we get an arborist? I don't know whether we can do it that way or not, but.
Well, that would be a condition, right? We would say you can take out, you know, the arborist clearly stated that there were dead trees and John around the volleyball court, and John, you know, dead trees are pretty obvious generally. And if we, you know, that could be a condition, just to approve the dead trees, I guess. But that's a challenge for Mr. Long, because then he still is going, I imagine, will want
Right.
to deal with
John.
with the other trees that may or may not need to come out. I guess that's just not that's not as clear in the arborist report.
Right.
Excuse me for just a moment. Jeremiah, do you have another party who is here to speak this evening as well?
No.
No? Okay. I have an individual with the last name Long as well.
Oh, my wife's driving home from work. She may have tried on her phone to get on or something. Maybe that's her. She might
Okay.
be listening. Maybe that's
N.A. Long?
And what is it? CA?
N.A.?
I don't. She's
No.
CA, but not NA.
Okay, thank you.
And is there a criteria of how much a tree has to be diseased before, or is it just a judgment call by the arborist? Like
The arborist, I mean, I've had arborists who we actually asked him to take out a tree on our property, and he said, it's a lovely tree. You just need to take off a couple branches and it's going to be fine. So, you know, an arborist, that's what they should be able to do. They should be able to tell you, you know, in a pretty detailed way, especially with this emerald ash borer, what you know, how long your tree has and how diseased it is, because some of those ashes can last for a while and some aren't. I mean, it just, but that's exactly what an arborist should be able to tell you, or should have, and he should have told you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Is this? I'm not asking anybody to speak on this particular arborist, but it seems like a struggle to get, you know, an accurate report here. Can you make a recommendation of another arborist? I mean, I don't want to have to put this guy in a headlock. You know, this is ridiculous. I would guess this is part of his normal course of action, is that you guys are, you know, he's got to go through you whenever there's a wetlands proximity. And if this is like the same old thing, I mean, you know, warning, do not use these guys or something like that, because, you know, again, I'm pretty calm because that's generally me, but I'm boiling inside over the ridiculousness of this for all of us, actually.
I mean, there are some good arborists around. I don't know, John Delore, I don't know if we're in the.
Excuse me, I don't think we can be in the position of recommending anybody, unfortunately. So just because of the way it could be misconstrued or,
yeah,
I mean, I understand the question, I understand your frustration, but it's a slippery slope for us to start to recommending somebody, because then whether we're 100% innocent or not, people can look at us as steering it towards somebody, and it's tough. I'd love to give you two people, but we just can't do it. But I'm sure I mean, you could, if you have a friend that's an engineer or somebody that you know that, you know, is in the landscaping business, maybe they could give you a couple names and why. You know, because I'm very uncomfortable with us giving out names for people. I wish we could.
No, I agree. That's a good point. I guess what it comes down to, Mr. Long, is if you really want to get the dead trees out sooner rather than later, we can discuss that among the agency for the dead trees, and then
say that in the report.
And then
CA just walked in. She's home. You wanted to know who you listening on the?
No, I just no.
Well, I mean, I know you got a lot of other things going on, so I would say what they're saying is that the ones that he says are dead as doornails. Tell me if I'm correct here, that maybe they could conditionally approve those, but not the ones that, because he just said that some of them are diseased, but not. But he didn't, it's like somebody has heart disease, but they could live another 40 years. So he said these other ones are dead, but some are diseased, but he didn't give a specific on how much longer, because what these guys are saying is that like it could be 15, 20 years before there's any problem with the tree, even though it has a disease in it.
Yeah, but the tops of the trees are dying already.
Yeah, most of the trees, the tops are.
I wouldn't take a good tree down. I plant stuff. You come to my garden, take a look. I do everything to help the environment. So we wouldn't take down living trees. That's what I don't understand.
Yeah.
They're gonna fall on our house. We've had branches coming down, dead branches coming down all over. I can take pictures next time and show you.
Yeah, and again, I don't, you guys do this more than I do it, so
So let's do the ones that are dead. That's most of them.
so if you do that, can then we turn to this to the arborist and say we need more specificity with the other trees that aren't, if you will, dead as doornails or falling down already? What's the process there?
That's actually, I think, what we're encouraging to do. I mean, I think what we can do in order to hopefully accommodate the ones that are dead is conditionally approve it, subject to you and John getting together and agreeing on which trees are dead. You guys can, bring your tree cutting service in, cut those down. I think that's what I'm hearing from the commission. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we could approve those, subject to John working with and getting those done. In the meantime, you come back to us with a little more specific, information from your arborist on the ones that, are kind of iffy. But at least that gets you the ones that could be a hazard away from your house, and it doesn't cause, if there's a storm, it won't cause any more damage.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, yeah, definitely. So John, do you need to come back out and we'll go one by one with the trees, and ones that are obvious, put in that category, and then the other ones call the arborist and maybe, I don't know what, he tends to book further out than 30 days. So if he knows that there's conditional approval or otherwise he's going to.
Can't do it if it's wet either. He says he's gotta wait till it's dry.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure this is going to get done in the next 30 days anyway, so I'm just going to yield to what you guys tell me what you think is the best move, and we'll do that.
Get a second opinion.
Second
Well, could
opinion?
if he's scheduling 30 days out, I'm wondering, this is just a brainstorming, and if we extend our deadline for, till the next meeting, you can go ahead and schedule them, and then John can get together with you and the arborist, and any ones that there's a dispute, or not a dispute, but a question about, the arborist could provide us more information for the next meeting, and you can just work it into what he's doing. If that makes sense.
That might encourage him to not come out and work for half the amount of trees that he could on one day, So
Okay.
that might make sense, right, John? Okay.
Okay. So, is this an extension then?
Yeah, we're gonna need an extension.
Okay. All right, Mr. Long. So if you're okay, it sounds like, then we'll extend this application. And you can work with your arborist. We can identify the trees, and hopefully he'll come out and we can sort the questionable trees into takeout or not. And then this would be, any additional information would be at the next meeting, and then you could have him booked already and ready to go. Is that what I'm hearing?
What I was thinking was what Bob said was, I think, was whichever trees are, do we know which trees are the ones, we identified which trees are the dead ones? Do we even have that information?
I thought your arborist did that.
He did. He said
Yeah.
in the letter, he said there are trees around the volleyball court that are dead. So he said there are definitely dead trees. And then he said there were some other trees that were diseased and eventually will die. It's just an unfortunate use of, just, I don't know why he wouldn't be more clear. So I think you're going with the other option where we just approve the dead trees coming out. Is that what you're saying? So we do a conditional approval, we say, fine, take out the dead trees. John can, I guess, go and make sure it's just the dead trees. We're doing that. And then you work with the arborist to see if the other, if he can be a little more clear on the other trees. Is that the option that, those are kind of the two options. We can either, so it's three options. We can deny this, just deny this. We can conditionally approve the dead trees to come out, or we can extend this application to the next meeting, and we can identify the dead trees. John can identify that, but your arborist can also come out and give more information on the other trees. So those are kind of the three options.
I'm thinking that it might make more sense as far as getting things going to conditionally approve the dead as the doornail trees. And then the arborist still has to come out to identify the degree of disease in the remaining trees. But that just seems to make more sense. It kind of gets him on the hook and gets him moving a little bit more proactively, I think, than just pushing it off again.
Right. So he's committed. Yes, John, did you have a?
Yeah, I'm a little reluctant to do that without the arborist being there with me. I'm not going to go out there with no foliage on these trees. And if I pick one tree that's not dead and it's dead, I'm going to be, I'm just uncomfortable doing that. I think if I've got a professional licensed arborist with me and he says number 6 is dead, number 5 is dead, number 12 is dead, number 2 is dead, I can agree or disagree. I'll probably agree. And I can ask him questions like, this looks diseased, but it doesn't look dead. And he can tell me yay or nay. But ultimately, this responsibility is on the homeowner and his professional arborist. So, I know he's got 3 options. Quite frankly, if it's a scheduling problem, I think he's going to have a problem if we come out there and there's only really 3 dead trees and he's got 12 he wants to take down, that means he's going to have to come back and do it again. I think really the most prudent way to do this is for Mr. Long to send an email to me, just asking for an extension so he has more time to get either me and the arborist out there, or he gets another arborist to look at the whole thing and just and choose all the trees that are compromised to the point where they have to be removed. Then he only does it once. I mean, if he wants to do it, that option that Mr. Long suggested that he would like to do, that's fine. But I'm going to go out there with his arborist.
Well, I think that's fair. I mean, that if it, that you would only go out if the arborist is also there.
Yeah.
So John, should I be calling you to try to coordinate with him for us to all be here together?
Yeah, well, we're not making a decision this evening, so we're going to need an extension for you to do that. So you're going to still need to send me an email requesting or giving permission, for an extension to the next regular meeting, so we can go out there and evaluate the dead trees. Yes.
Well, could we approve the removal of the trees that are quote unquote obviously dead, conditioned on you and his arborist agreeing that they were dead before he takes them out?
Yeah, I guess you could do that.
We could do that without an extension, though, right? And I think
Well, that's this application. Then we're done with this application.
Right.
We've made a decision on this application.
Right. And I guess that's the flip side, Mr. Long, is that if we do the conditional removal, then you would have to resubmit an application if you want to get the rest of the trees out. Right. Because this application would be done. We would have made a decision. And that's just, we have to do that. We have to either get an extension tonight or make a decision, because those are the regulations.
Okay, what if he says all the trees are dead? Then what happens? They all come down?
If John agrees. Yeah.
If John agrees that they're all dead, then they can all come down.
That's up to you. What do you think? They're all dead, but.
The problem is he did not articulate that in the letter. like, it's one thing you say, listen, Aunt Edna and Mary are dead. They've been dead for 5 years and they're just standing there and they're not even, their hearts aren't even beating anymore. And then, you know, I could keep going with the joke, but you know, but if you're saying, so make sure I'm clear on this. If you make a decision on the conditional, then that means that there's another application fee. Is that
Yeah,
basically?
if we do any decision tonight, if we deny, then you're done. But if we do a conditional approval, then you're also done. That this application would be done. So you would get your trees out, however many are deemed dead. But if there are any other ones you'd want to have come out, you would have to come back.
So it's sort of like,
Go ahead.
what?
I was
Yeah,
gonna say, there's a
like-
chance if they're clearly dead and John talks to the arborist and he can be reassured of that, there's a chance you can take all 12 of them out, depending on what your arborist tells John, I guess.
so it's like going to Mohegan, I can put 135 quarters in a slot machine, or I can take a shot here that he'll come back and give us an articulate letter that states that they are actually dead, not diseased.
Yeah, it's a gamble.
All right, I'll take the gamble. Because I think they're all dead. And already we've had
Okay.
trees like practically make us have $100,000 renovation of the house because it came 5 feet from the house, so.
Okay, so you're gonna take the door 2 or door 1 of conditional approval.
And hope, and it'll be $135 if I'm wrong. All right?
Okay, which is better than more.
Right,
All right, can I get a motion from an agency member? You kept track of all this?
I make a motion that we approve application 2127 conditioned on John DeLaura meeting with the owner and the arborist to determine exactly which ones are in fact dead and not just diseased, and allow for the removal of those that are dead. And the owner will follow up on those that are diseased at a later time.
I second.
All right. Any more discussion? All right, all in
Thanks for
favor?
your time. Appreciate it. I know it's aggravating for you guys too.
Oh, no, so all in favor of this motion?
Aye.
We've
Aye.
lost Joe. Yes, well, so good luck. And you can coordinate your arborist with John DeLaura, and hopefully you will have won your gamble.
Let's hope. I'm not much of a gambler, man, but thank you. I'll try it this time.
Okay, good luck.
Have a good night.
All right, so we are due up for our public hearing. We're 3 minutes late. So we will have to switch gears to the public hearing. I guess we just open that up.
I'm just going to bring over our applicants here.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Great.
Marjorie, could you please confirm who am I missing?
Abigail Adams
Thank you. And John.
and possibly Mr. Picard and Mr. Gentile.
Richard is here.
All right, so do we have everybody? Yes? Okay. Oh. Is that everybody now?
Mike Picard. I'm sorry. Here he comes.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is public hearing for application 21-31, 35 Cottage Road. We'll open the public hearing at 7:36 p.m.
And go ahead, Madam Chairman. I do just to let you know that we did receive an environmental intervener with respect to this application as well. I did share those applications late in the afternoon with the commission and the applicant.
Right. So there have been, so I guess we can have the applicant, well, I guess we can have the applicant recap some of this application and changes, Erin, and then we can, well, I guess we can then talk about next steps, with having the public speak.
And Attorney Shansky, just as we do have an intervener, and the commission, I would believe, would need to make a determination that this was submitted in accordance with the statutes to then allow intervener status and those individuals to come over as panelists and be part of the discussion, correct? Kayla?
Yes. Sorry, yes.
I'm sorry. I did say, Madam, I did say Attorney Shansky, excuse me.
You did, and I'm
Sorry, Marjorie.
I wasn't sure. I thought, oh.
Marjorie was just below you. I apologize.
That's okay. Yes, so yes, we got those. I believe they, the documentation looked fine to me. And that was going to be my next question. Do they come over now then? Since they have intervener status?
They would then be considered a party to
Okay.
the application and could, yes, for listening to the presentation, questions, etc.
Okay. Well, then if they're here, I guess we do that so that we can get this started. Great. And is that everyone?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So for the applicant, would you like to start?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, and members of the agency. I am Attorney Marjorie Shansky. I represent 35 Cottage Road in this regulated activity permit. I am here this evening with my team, Michael Ott, professional engineer from Summerhill Civil Engineering and Land Surveyors, Eric Davison, wildlife biologist, certified soil scientist, and certified professional wetland scientist from Davison Environmental, LLC, and Abigail Adams, our landscape architect from A2 Land Consulting, LLC. Earlier today, I sent a letter to the agency recapping the law governing review of applications that are confined to the upland review area. And I'm calling it the regulated upland review area. I'm sorry, I'm calling it the upland review area and not the regulated area, because in my many conversations with the people up at DEEP, they are very much of the mind, and it is a truism, that the agency regulates activity, not areas. So we look at the upland review area and we evaluate whether any activity within the upland review area has an adverse impact on the inland wetlands, not on the upland review area. So that distinction is made, and I provided a raft of citations describing the nuances of that I also included in my letter law on on what comprises substantial evidence and what does not comprise substantial evidence. And that was prompted in part from my review of the many correspondence that the agency has received from members of the public who express concerns. They express generalized environmental concerns. They express concerns about wildlife. They express concerns about things about which people have concerns, not delegitimizing any of that, but which are not within your jurisdiction. You are not an environmental protection agency. You are not the wildlife protection agency. You regulate inland wetlands and watercourses, as you well know. And so I provided that information just by way of refresher and by way of easy access in the event of any questions. Also appended to my letter was Eric Davison's resume, and also a sketch from one of Mr. Matthews, our architect. I'm sorry, John, I didn't mean to not introduce you. John Matthews, the architect for the development. An early concept drawing showing a different configuration on the parcel because there were alternatives considered. And one of them was to propose the construction pretty much as configured, but without the robust riparian buffer. And we rejected that and chose instead to do something to serve the pond that is currently adjacent to a manicured lawn that goes right to its edge. And instead, as Abigail will describe later, insert something that will be protective of the pond itself, protective of any wildlife that use the pond, and have service and function in that respect. From a housekeeping perspective, and Madam Chair, you asked us to recap the development. We will actually be rediscussing the development because when we met with you on October 4th, when the agency accepted the application or received the application more accurately, the team spent almost an hour discussing in detail what is being proposed, but it wasn't in the context of a public hearing. So we really need to retrace those steps. I want to state for the record, and is probably in the record, that we received an email today from the Director of Health, Trent Joseph, with whom we had met, who has reviewed Mr. Ott's plans, and they are now sent up to the state for review, as is the normal course for a system of this size. And so we are well on the path there to having our approval there. I also state for the record that last month I sent notices in accordance with your regulations and returned them to John. And with that, I would like to suggest that after my team presents, I will make some summary comments prior to the intervention, and then I would reserve some time following the public and the intervener for some additional comments before we close. So with that, I would call on Mr. Ott, followed by Mr. Davison, followed by Ms. Adams. Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Mike Ott. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor with Summerhill Civil Engineers with an office on Wall Street here in Madison. May I share my screen?
Yes, please.
So can the agency see my screen now, a Google Earth image? Okay, so, okay, just turn my audio up a little bit here. So this is a zoomed out view, just as a start to get an idea of the context of the location of the site, the context and the location. So where this pin is the 35 Cottage Road location. And this, as you all know, this is the Hammonasset connector coming down. This is State Service Road 450, and the Boston Post Road is going left and right across the screen. Hopefully you can see my cursor moving. The Hammonasset River to the east, and Tom's Creek to the west, which comes out by Pent Road, if you're all familiar with that, and ultimately comes out to the Sound. This is Hammonasset Beach State Park, of course, Salt Meadow Park, the parking area for the trailhead for the Greenway Trail here on the Post Road. So the site is some, if you measure the straight line distance, closest distance to the Hammonasset River, the Hammonasset River is some 2,100 feet or so to the northeast of the site. The site is actually within the Tom's Creek local watershed. I stated that in the stormwater management design report. So again, this is Tom's Creek here, and these are tidal wetlands associated with Tom's Creek. So is this wetland that the entrance to the park crosses. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. There's a tidal wetland here on the east side once you get into the park. This tidal wetland, of course. And then there are small areas of tidal wetland to the northwest, in the northwest quadrant of the Hammonasset Connector Route 1 intersection. And there's another small one here. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. So there's another small wetland here in the northeast quadrant of this Hammonasset Connector Route 1 intersection. And the reason I'm pointing this out is, and this is in our report, the municipal storm drainage system within Mill Road and within the westerly portion of Cottage Road actually discharges to this tidal wetland here. So if I zoom in a little bit more, hopefully you can see this clearly. It looks like this aerial image was taken when the development at 41 Cottage Road was under construction. It looks like the foundations were in at the time, as you can see, of the two buildings. So this is the 41 Cottage Road site. Mill Road on the left, Cottage Road, hard to see with the trees, with the tree canopy, but Cottage Road right and left across the bottom of the screen. This is the existing home. It was a home at one time, later an office on the site, and this is the existing garage and office on the site. Those two buildings are still there. So this must be a 2019 photo, I would think. I'm fairly sure. So I'm going to switch screens, and hopefully you'll be able to see the switch without me stopping sharing and resharing. Can you see the plan set now on your screens? No? Okay. All right. Let me stop sharing and I will do it again. I think that'll solve it. How about now?
Yep.
Okay. So this is the drawing set that was submitted. It's the latest set. It's revised to November 29th. I'm going to go to the existing conditions plan. Mill Road on the top, left and right on the top of the sheet. Cottage Road up and down on the left side. If you continued up Cottage Road, that's that westerly extension that almost goes to the Hammonasset Connector. It used to, you all probably know, it used to go over to Signal Hill Road before the connector was constructed. And this is, if you followed Mill Road to the south, you'd come out at Route 1 and the entrance to Hammonasset would be diagonally to your right as you sit at Route 1. So the site, and you all, I think you're all familiar with the site, but the site, again, this is the previous home that later became an office. This is the garage office. There is a stone surfaced parking area here, a driveway curb cut on Mill Road, a driveway curb cut on Cottage Road, and the pond, of course, on the property. The surface area of the pond at its high water elevation is about 12,000 square feet. Another 2,000 square feet or so of surface area at its high water elevation is located on the 41 Cottage Road site. So the property boundary between the two sites cuts across the pond, as you all probably know. The pond, to the best of our knowledge, the pond is an excavated pond. In talking to the previous owners some 30 or so years ago, they simply excavated and intercepted the groundwater table. The pond elevation fluctuates. We've been working on these two sites for the past 3 years now, and we've seen the pond as low as elevation 3 and as high as elevation 5 in the different times that we've taken measurements out there. The wetland boundary, actually watercourse boundary that was flagged by Rich Snarsky of New England Environmental Services, is actually the high water elevation of the pond. It's pretty readily seen just walking out onto the site. It's pretty obvious where the normal high water elevation of the pond is. The site is, the total parcel area is 1.94 acres. Some of the letters that have come in from residents have indicated that the property is 1.1 acres. I think that's just it might be a confusion, because in my report, I noted that there's 1.1 acres, I believe, within the 100-foot upland review area limit, which is this blue line. So the total area of the site is just under 2 acres. The site is, and I studied this again today, and I walked the site again last week. The site surface water runoff is completely contained on the site. No portion of the site drains off-site to Mill Road, to Cottage Road, to the 41 Cottage Road site, or to the 42, I think it is, Mill Road residential home to the north. So surface water runoff is completely contained within the site. If I zoom in here, you can see if the high water pond elevation of 5, you can see that the lowest elevation in this corner here is about 11. So at the lowest elevation difference on our site, the ground surface is 6 feet above the high water elevation of the pond. Similarly, although we don't have the topography, we will shortly, on the adjacent site on 41 Cottage Road in this area, it is, by my inspection last week, continues, this topography continues, and the site is much higher than the pond. So surface water runoff can't leave this site and drain off-site to the 2 roads or to adjoining properties. So I will, I'll try to make this quick. I know you've heard this before, but as Attorney Shansky said, it was not in the context of a public hearing. So I guess we have to go through this again. So the proposal, as you know, is for a single 3-story building. The footprint of the building is round numbers, 7,800 square feet of footprint. There will be 18 one-bedroom apartments, rental apartments within the building. The building is, the face of the building is at its closest point 50 feet, excuse me, from the watercourse boundary. These dashed lines are balconies at the upper level of the building. So when I note the 50-foot distance, I'm talking about the face of the wall, the face of the building proper. Again, at its closest point, it's 50 feet from the current watercourse boundary that's been flagged by Rich Snarsky. Parking area in front, 27 total spaces. Curb cut on Mill Road, curb cut on Cottage Road. Both of these curb cuts are very close to partially within the existing curb cut locations. I'll go to stormwater management last, I think. The on-site wastewater system is comprised of a very large septic tank, a wastewater effluent pump chamber, a sanitary vault for that contains valves, a force main that lifts the wastewater effluent up about 8 feet in elevation to a leaching field in this northwest corner of the site. The septic system, the on-site, the subsurface sewage disposal system, has been designed to meet the requirements of the state of Connecticut Public Health Code, the technical standards of the state of Connecticut Public Health Code. It's considered a large system because it's equal to or greater than, it has a design flow, a daily design flow equal to or greater than 2,000 gallons per day. The design flow is 2,700 gallons per day. So because it's a large system as the state public health code defines them, the local health department has to review and approve it. And then it has to be sent to the state health department for their review and approval. So as Attorney Shansky said earlier, we have been through the local approval process, and the health department, and only they can do it, is in the process of sending it up to the state health department for their review. The tanks are some 75 feet or so from the wetland, as I recall. And the primary leaching fields, these three, this would be the lowest row and the closest to the wetland, is at its closest point is 92 feet from the watercourse boundary that Ridge flagged. The reason, excuse me, the reason the wastewater system is up in this corner is to locate it as far away as we could from the watercourse boundary, the pond edge, to locate it in the best, where the best soil and groundwater conditions are on the site. And that after soil testing on the site, the excavation of test pits, that turned out to be the right place to put it. So we've got it as far away from the pond as we can, and we've got it in, we believe, the proper location where the soil and groundwater conditions are correct. In this area, although this area is wooded, we had our landscape architect and our environmental consultant look at the area, and the majority of the vegetation, I think I'm saying that fairly, the majority is invasive species, including a lot of ailanthus, or tree of heaven, as it's commonly known. So the plan is to remove all that, expose a very nice looking, actually, stone wall along this northerly boundary, and then this area will be replanted in accordance with the the landscape plans. So that's in part, although this is the proper place for the septic system, a secondary benefit will be to remove the invasive species and replant this area. There's an extensive landscaping plan, as you know, that Abigail Adams, our landscape architect, will go over. So I won't go over that. The parking area, as you can see, is all limited to the front on the Cottage Road and Mill Road side. There's a continuous sidewalk, I think you can see, all along the parking lot and the two driveways from Mill Road to Cottage Road. There are small sidewalks at the building entries out to the main sidewalks. The parking area is paved bituminous concrete, precast concrete curbing all the way around. There will be exterior pole-mounted lighting for the parking area. I know some of this is not really germane to wetlands, but I'm just trying to give you an overall view of the whole site proposal. What is germane, of course, is the stormwater management system. So I'm gonna stop sharing again and switch screens. See if I can do this. Okay. So hopefully you can see a different drawing now. This is a catchment area map. Can you see the change? Hopefully. Okay, so excuse me. So this area outlined in orange, and hopefully you can see the difference here, but I'll kind of trace this. It runs to the building corner, along the face of the building, across the driveway, and then follows the curb line of the parking lot. So it is this total area, which includes the parking lot, the vast majority, as you can see, I'll zoom out a little bit, of the concrete sidewalks, and the area, the small grass areas between the building and the sidewalks. It's about, actually it is a quarter of an acre. So that whole area from the face of the building to the curb line of the parking lot is connected and goes into the stormwater management system. This small area labeled CA3, which is only a few hundred square feet, drains out to Mill Road. And this is, of course, in the proposed condition. So this piece of pavement of the driveway drains out to Mill Road, and it will go, surface water will go down the gutter and into this existing catch basin with the red circle around it. On the other end of the site, this area labeled CA4, which is bigger, of course, and includes the paved driveway, some lawn and landscaped area, and some lawn here also, as well as this piece of sidewalk and this building entry roof, will drain out to Cottage Road and will municipal storm drainage system is the system I mentioned earlier that discharges to the tidal wetland at the northeast quadrant of the intersection of the Hammonasset Connector and Route 1. That's why I pointed that out. So this municipal storm drainage system that's in place today discharges to that northeast quadrant. In addition, this area, CA2, this sort of triangular area, which will be all lawn and or landscape plant beds, will also drain out to both Mill Road and Cottage Road and go into this catch basin. So all of the drainage areas on the developed portion of the site, including the building roof, are relatively small. And when you model them in accordance with standards of practice, the hydrologic models indicate that the highest peak rate of discharge is a little over 2 cubic feet per second. And that's very low. It's a very low rate of discharge for development. It's just the rate of discharge and it's just the peak. But I just want to give you a sense, if you look at the stormwater management report, you'll see that because of the small size of these catchment areas, the peak rates of discharge are very low, even for the 100-year event. When we modeled the peak rates of runoff, we assumed that this whole orange area was paved. It's not, but as you can see, there's areas of grass here. But we just assumed it was all paved, so it's a little more conservative. And we did not model this little CA3 area or this CA4 area or this little lawn area CA5 that I forgot to mention that also will go out to Cottage Road. Because they are so small, the results of the model are truly meaningless. They're not, the areas are so small, they have no effect on the municipal storm drainage system. So this whole large orange area is collected in this one catch basin in a single low point in the parking lot. When the stormwater leaves that catch basin, it goes into this manhole structure here, which is a flow diversion structure. There's details for this on the plan, and in simple terms, what it does is it directs the water quality flow, a certain flow rate, this way to the right. So it comes out of the catch basin, goes into this flow diversion manhole, it hangs a right, and it goes into this manhole, and then it follows the storm sewer system down to this manhole, to this manhole, to this constructed wetland, this constructed stormwater wetland that we plan to construct around the fringe of the pond. And that's what this hatched area is. And I'll get back to that in a second. So in accordance with the procedures in the Connecticut DEP Stormwater Quality Manual, this flow diversion manhole has been designed to ensure that the water quality flow rate and therefore the water quality volume for the site enters this storm drainage system and ultimately goes to this constructed wetland. What I forgot to tell you, of course, is in its path as it goes to the wetland, this first structure right here is a stormwater treatment structure. It's a manufactured stormwater treatment structure. It's a hydrodynamic separator type stormwater treatment structure. There's details for it on the plans. It's talked about in the stormwater management design report. So that water quality flow rate is directed through this pipe to this stormwater treatment structure, which provides water quality benefits. And then the stormwater, after it leaves, follows this piping alignment down to the constructed stormwater wetland. The construction stormwater wetland is considered a primary treatment practice in the Connecticut DEP Stormwater Quality Manual. The hydrodynamic separator, the stormwater treatment structure, is pre-treatment for this wetland. Prior to the wetland, it's considered a secondary treatment practice. The hydrodynamic separator, as it says in our report, was chosen to be an approved hydrodynamic separator by the Connecticut Department of Transportation to be sized properly to treat the water quality flow rate from this orange drainage area and also have the required sediment storage for this orange drainage area. So before parking lot and sidewalk water goes to this wetland, it goes through this stormwater treatment structure first. then it goes to the constructed stormwater wetland around the edge of the existing pond. The building roof water goes directly to the stormwater constructed wetland. The reason, if you remember, is that for residential building roof material types and a residential building use, in other words, not a commercial use with some process in the building that would be vented to the roof and potentially put pollutants on the roof. For this type of residential roof type, the Connecticut DEP considers roof water to be clean in terms of stormwater quality. It is being treated because it goes into the stormwater wetland, but it does not have to be directed through the stormwater treatment structure. The remainder of the site, again, remember this site is surface water runoff is completely contained in this site. That surface water drainage pattern won't change. So all the other areas of the site will drain towards the pond as they do today. A big difference will be today, as you know, there's a maintained lawn literally right up to the edge of the pond, almost all the way around it. It's wooded back here. In fact, you can see the limits of this curly line is the limits of the wooded area. So and I'm sure you've all seen this, the vast majority of the perimeter of this pond is a maintained lawn. In the proposed development, that lawn will be removed, and not only will this wetland be constructed, but the landscape plan that you'll hear about later will plant this area around the constructed stormwater wetland also. So utility services come in from Cottage Road over here. There is a generator. There's a pad here on the site right here for a generator for the building. Trying to make sure I give you a good overview here. There's been some, although I think I will say, although these are not issues related to the wetland application, I might as well mention them now. There's been talk about flooding in Cottage Road. We're aware of the ponding of surface water runoff in Cottage Road. We several months ago met with town staff and shared photos that we took that show the ponding in Cottage Road. That ponded water does not enter this site. It leaves, some of it leaves to the west when it builds up enough, I'm sorry, to the south, and drains off the road pavement onto the state land across from the site. Some of it makes its way into these two catch basins on either side of the intersection. Some of it just sits in ponds and ultimately infiltrates at the edge of the road, which happens on a lot of roads where water ponds along the edge. It just takes some time and then it infiltrates. So water from Cottage Road does not enter this site. Surface water runoff from Mill Road enters this site. There is no curbing. There's only short sections of curbing at this catch basin and at this catch basin. So surface water runoff potentially can, I should say, leave Mill Road and enter this site. I'll tell you that it actually does. The soil, the earth along the edge of the road may be high enough to have effectively created a what we call a dirt curb, and it may keep the water in the gutter, and it may make its way all the way down here, but it does have the potential to come onto the site. That, unlike Cottage Road, just the topography is such that the Cottage Road water can't enter this site. I think that's a pretty good overview of at least the civil portion of this. The site characteristics and the civil portion of the site. I'd be glad to answer any questions the agency members might have, or just turn this to, if you'd like, to Abigail Adams, our landscape architect.
I think Eric first. Mike.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Eric Davison. I'm a wildlife biologist and a certified professional wetland scientist here in Chester. I also, like you folks, am a commissioner on my local wetland commission here in town, so I know what you have to go through with these meetings. So let me, I guess, briefly review what we had gone over in the initial meeting, that just to describe the wetland that's on the site. And as you have in your filings, I drafted a report back in September that includes all the information that I'm just going to quickly summarize about the wetland. So as Mike mentioned, it's about 14,000 square feet in size, the pond. It has no connection to any other wetlands and watercourses. It is completely isolated on the landscape. In terms of the hydrology, as Mike noted, it fluctuates approximately 2 feet in elevation during the growing season. That's due in part to the superficial geology of the site, which is coarse grained sands and gravels that allow water to kind of move through the soil in a way that you get greater fluctuations in pond depths generally when they're in sand and gravel as opposed to till. During the drawdown period, there is a narrow fringe around the pond when you get that 2 foot drop and you get a small exposed hydric soil border. The maximum depth of the pond, based on when we did our dip net and seine sampling, exceeds 5 feet. That's about the depth I was able to get to without going for a swim when I had my chest waders on. My best guess is the pond is total depth is somewhere between 8 and 10 feet. The drainage from the pond is, as Mike indicated, partly groundwater intercept, but also surface runoff from the surrounding uplands, the existing development on the site, the neighboring development for the condos to the southeast, and some road runoff, although the drainage from Mill Road is largely cut off and collected in the stormwater system that's built into the road. And as Mike indicated, the road's a bit elevated, so of the runoff from the west side of Mill Road does not really get to the pond. The pond doesn't really have any in-water vegetation. When you have that drawdown period, there is a narrow band of some emergent vegetation, some aquatic species. The primary aquatic species is just a species of waterweed, which is just a common aquatic plant. And then there were some other common emergent plants like purslane, but the shoreline and what we would normally call the littoral shelf in a larger system, where you have a gradual change in grade from uplands into the water, and you might get a lot of vegetation that utilizes that shallow water. It just doesn't really exist in this pond, just because it's a very steep drop. You take a step or two into the water and you're almost at the deepest part of the water. So vegetation in the pond is very limited. We did do some baseline biological sampling, and that's documented in my report. As I said, we did some visual surveys early on in April, and then we did some dip net and seine surveys. A seine is basically just a long weighted net that two people use to spread out across the pond and basically drag through the water column to capture whatever aquatic species are in the pond. The description of what we found is in my report. Just to summarize, it's a pretty low diversity pond. It's kind of consistent with what we typically find in small suburban ponds that are isolated. We found predominantly bullfrog and green frog, which are two common species of what we call American water frogs. And we found a single snapping turtle that was using the site as a feeding site. They move across the landscape and take advantage of different wetland systems. So not a permanent resident. And then we did find a population of spotted salamander, which I'll touch on in a minute. The last species we saw, at least in small numbers, was gray tree frog, which is another common tree frog species that inhabits a wide variety of wetlands in Connecticut. But overall, it's pretty low diversity. And again, the primary reason for the low diversity is the pond is very small. It doesn't have a surface water connection to wetlands or water courses. That's generally when you have that, when a pond is part of a larger system, you have a lot more wildlife diversity. There's not much in the way of shoreline vegetation, as I said, or buffer vegetation or vegetation within the upland review area. That's mostly lawn. And then there's no real interspersion of vegetation within the pond. In other words, there's no islands or emergent, shrub hummocks or things that could support a greater diversity of wildlife. So those are some of the factors that I think that affect the lack of wildlife diversity in the pond. I want to touch on vernal pool function because I mentioned this in my report. And I think we talked about this at the initial meeting before we had a public hearing. We did find spotted salamander in the pond, which is a vernal pool indicator species. When we did our April survey, we found 24 egg masses in the pond. Spotted salamanders are widespread in Connecticut. They occur in all ecoregions, so they're not tied to a specific geologic or region of the state. They're ubiquitous, but they're notable in the sense that they're vernal pool species, and vernal pools obviously are important resources. They're very unique habitats that produce high amounts of biomass for a couple of species, one being the spotted salamander. And they're also notable because they're a species that has two habitat types that it requires: upland forest during most of the year, and then wetlands for breeding. So that's what we call interhabitat mobility requirements. That makes them susceptible to impact during their seasonal migration. From a technical perspective, the pond is not a vernal pool. The primary driver for vernal pool, if you're looking just at the technical definition, is the presence of a seasonal flooded hydrology. In other words, that the pool would dry at some point during the year, which would preclude the presence of animals that are fully aquatic, such as fish or species like I had described, these randed frogs or American water frogs, like the bullfrog and green frog. That seasonal drying would basically eliminate any animals that require permanent flooding. The reason that's an important part of the vernal pool definition is when you have permanent ponding and you have aquatic species, most of those species are highly predatory on spotted salamander. Both the green frog and bullfrog are known predators on spotted salamander larvae, mostly because those two species have a multi-year larval life cycle, and the larvae are in all cases larger in size than the spotted salamander larvae. The other important thing is not just predation, but when you have the green frog and bullfrog tend to occur at very high densities, high biomass, which is what we saw in this pond, and you can see it in one of the pictures in my report. That I think at the end of my photo log, you'll see basically with just one large swipe of the net, you'll see there's massive amounts of these two species in the pond. So the other big issue with those being present in a small resource is competition. Spotted salamander and other vernal pool indicator species have a tough time competing for food resources when you have such a high biomass of these larger frogs. The other thing that's notable about the pond in terms of its sort of limited vernal pool habitat is the lack of what I described earlier, which is emergent vegetation or vegetation that basically occurs in the shallows. In other words, there are definitely situations where I've seen small ponds support fish and these types of frogs, but also be somewhat productive for vernal pool indicator species when they have this transitional marsh habitat or shrub habitat So basically you'd have shallow emergent water around the limits of the pond. And that provides sort of a refuge and sort of a micro habitat, if you will, for the vernal pool indicator species in it. And in a sense, the open water species thrive in the open water habitat, and the vernal pool species thrive in the shoreline. This pond just doesn't have that. So there's really no refuge for spotted salamander to be anywhere but the open water. The other important thing that comes with the lack of emergent vegetation is attachment sites for the egg masses. The spotted salamander lays its egg masses on emergent vegetation or woody debris within the pond. And in this case, all of the egg masses we saw were on 4 or 5 larger branches that had fallen on the north side, but also from that large pine tree on the east side. And all of the egg masses were attached to those few branches. So there's a limitation on attachment sites as well, which is another limiting factor. Overall, I think if the intent on a site like this were to improve the vernal pool habitat, I think you'd need, pretty intensive intervention, I think, for this to be a long-term viable habitat. And that would include things like removal of some of the randid frog biomass, which is competition, and then development of shallow water emergent plantings within the wetland. Those in wetland habitat enhancements wouldn't alleviate what is also a larger issue in that, as I had said earlier, spotted salamanders, they require upland forest when they're not breeding. They spend most of their life in upland forest habitat, and in the habitats surrounding this pond, the forest is highly fragmented, and there's just not a lot of it. All of the available forest that I think is probably driving this small population occurs across the road. I think it's probably the patch on the west side of Mill Road, or on the other side of the road to the south. There is a small forest patch on the north side of the pond, but it's less than 100 feet wide. It's got the road on one side, the house to the north, and the lawn on the south. So it doesn't really have a lot of function. So the forest cover surrounding the pond is highly fragmented. So that's a major limiting factor for vernal pool species. But part of the intent of our landscaping plan, which Abigail's going to describe, is to try to convert some of that lawn that occurs around about 60% of the pond, try to revegetate that with native species and try to create some cover around the pond. That'll really help for what is a critical area for 2 parts of their life cycle. When the adults are migrating into the pond, they really do sort of what we call stage up around the pond. When they're coming in, they can spend a week or 2 around that pond fridge. And when it's all exposed lawn, they're exposed to predators, they're exposed to desiccation and drying without any cover. So revegetating that pond border will help adults migrating in and out of the pond when they breed. It'll also help the metamorphs, which are the young of the year, when they leave the pond. It'll help them have some habitat to emerge into as they slowly move out into the adjacent landscape. But I think if one were to take a more proactive enhancement plan towards trying to improve the vernal pool habitat, I think removing some of that competition from green frogs and bullfrogs would be critical. We didn't find fish in the pond, but it's certainly suitable for small fish, and it doesn't take much for a small fish release for them to become established in a small pond like that. So that's another possibility. But I do think if you look, there's a photograph in my report that shows one of the spotted salamander larvae that we captured during the netting, but every single larvae that we had is the same as what is shown in that picture, where the tail is half missing. And so that's a larvae that survived a predation event but lost half its tail, which will grow back, but that's a significant impact on its time to development, its survival rate, and its overall fitness. So the other factor that is, excuse me, the other thing we were doing to do, which is a minor enhancement we thought was useful, was there is a small section of curbing along Mill Road. It's not continuous, as Mike said, it converts in sort of into like a dirt curb, but there is a section of traditional curbing that leads to a catch basin. And I do think if part of this population is probably migrating from the west, there's a small forest patch on the west side of Mill Road, between Mill Road and the Hammonasset connector. There is a little patch of forest there, and I would expect that some of the adults are migrating from that patch, and they would have to go over the road and could hit that curb. Instead of getting over the curb, because it's traditional curbing, they get trapped along the curb and fall into the stormwater system, and they would die. So we're proposing to remove that section of curbing and convert it to Cape Cod curbing, which has a shallower angle of repose and allows the salamanders to climb up and over the curbing without getting trapped into the catch basin. Just, I guess, I know I've read some of the intervention material and some of the neighbors' comments with regards to wildlife, not all of it, because some of it came in late this afternoon. So I haven't seen it all, but it seems like there is a lot of comments on sort of general environmental issues or loosely tied to wetlands, I would say. But so I guess I wanted to comment on that, and I guess some of it may be out of your realm of decision making. But when I get projects like this, I look at it like if you really were concerned about overall environmental impacts or benefits, if the town was, and this is how I approach applications that come before my commission. If the town was interested in additional residential density, it is always better to redevelop an existing developed site than it is to break into raw land. I mean, if you look at the amount of unit space you get from a project like this, and you have no new road construction, no additional habitat loss, no more sprawl, no increased habitat fragmentation. You're utilizing existing disturbed and developed areas. You are increasing the density, but these are all existing disturbed areas, and you don't have to put in any new utilities. It's just, to me, it just makes sense from an overall environmental impact. But so just to summarize, I think, to me, this is a pretty straightforward, simple suburban pond. It does not have any significant functions and values. To me, it's akin to a stormwater pond. I don't see much of a difference in its function as I would a constructed stormwater pond. And the basic facts of this application, to me, make it pretty clear that there's no adverse impact to this wetland. We're redeveloping an existing developed site. There are no direct wetland impacts. There is no loss of native or undisturbed upland review area habitat. And we've got, wetland enhancements that are going to improve on an area that's already pretty degraded in my sense, just to maintain lawn surrounding a pond. As Mike noted, he's designed this to take the water quality volume, which is that first inch, the first flush of the storm, the first inch of runoff, which is the dirtiest water, and treat that on site in this created wetland. That created wetland is going to be heavily planted with a berm that separates it from the pond, which is going to give it a nice slow discharge of flow through this dense vegetation before it reaches the pond. And the primary goal of that, from my perspective, which is what Mike and I talked about at length and worked on, was we want to keep the quote unquote dirty water, or the water quality volume discharge on site and treated on site. The critical resource in this whole area, to me, is the tidal wetlands. So that was my goal from day one on this, was not to focus on what to me was a very simple suburban pond, but to look at where could this water have the most impact if we didn't do any kind of treatment. And that, to me, was the tidal wetlands that are, going to a critical resource, Hammonasset State Park and all those associated tidal marshes. So we're taking all of that water and treating all of that runoff that's got all of the pollutants, and treating that on site with primary treatment and a treatment train that exceeds what's required by in the stormwater quality manual. So I fail to see any adverse impact to this wetland. Happy to answer any questions you might have. I know Abigail is going to go through the planting plan.
Mike just wanted to add one additional thing about the stormwater management, and then I'll go.
Thanks, Abigail. I apologize. And I may have done this the first time also. And Eric, actually what Eric just described is kind of a lead into this. I spoke about the water quality aspects of the stormwater management system, but I forgot to speak about the less frequent, greater depth rainfall events and the control of peak discharges. So you probably remember, I know we talked about this last time, but so the water quality volume, as we talked about, goes out and down to the constructed stormwater wetland, but the discharge of stormwater from the less frequent greater rainfall depth events is directed at this flow diversion structure into this subsurface detention system below the parking area. And there's details for all of this on the plan, and it's described in the stormwater management report, but it's comprised of manufactured chambers that provide a storage reservoir beneath the parking area and a piped outlet here to an outlet control structure that controls the rate of release of the stormwater from this subsurface system. And currently, the way we have this designed, the outlet pipe from this outlet control structure passes through the root system of this very nice large beech tree on the corner, and it makes a connection to the municipal storm drainage system. A couple things we want to say, and then, as you know, ultimately that storm drainage system goes to the tidal wetland. A couple things we wanted to say about that. The initial reason for doing this, the elevations are controlling us here. We cannot route this pipe in a different manner and make it by elevation into this catch basin. The storm sewer elevations in this catch basin are fixed, of course, and we cannot lengthen the pipe by traveling an alternate route to stay away from this tree to get into this basin. So, and this aligns with what Eric was just saying. What we've decided to do, and we haven't had the time to make this revision, but we will prior to, of course, 2 weeks at least prior to the next public hearing. We are going to eliminate this storm sewer connection so that we don't have to go through the root system of the beech tree, and we're going to direct the storm water from this detention system back to this wetland and to the pond. Abigail will, as you probably remember, we tried to take measures and steps to protect this during construction by hand excavating and using an air spade, not having a structure at this change in direction, just a bend in the pipe. But after some discussion, and we understand that there's great concern about the tree. We're concerned about the tree also, which is why we took those steps. We've found a way to eliminate this connection, so there will be no stormwater runoff discharge to that tidal wetland at the east quadrant of the Hammonasset Connector Route 1 intersection. All stormwater runoff will stay on the site as it does today. So we will, I apologize, I completely forgot to mention this, but we will be making that revision in time for everyone to review it prior to the next public hearing. I wanted to say, since Eric brought up the review letter that we received at 4 o'clock or so today, I have not had a chance to read it thoroughly and don't want to comment on it now. However, I do want to say one thing, because I think we're going to need to pursue some written clarification from the state of Connecticut on this issue, and that is the design of subsurface sewage disposal systems. So in brief, and you said this before in a previous land use application that this agency heard, practicing engineers, not in academia, not in research, just practicing civil engineers, design subsurface sewage disposal systems that are regulated under the state public health code. We design them to meet the state public health code requirements and standards. There are standards of practice applicable throughout the state for these types of systems regulated by the state public health code. I've had several conversations in the past several months with the state health department to make sure that, number one, I haven't misunderstood what I'm about to tell you all these years that I've been working, or that something has changed. So I confirmed with the state health department that the design criteria for sewage disposal systems regulated by the Connecticut DEEP do not apply to subsurface sewage disposal systems regulated by the Connecticut Department of Public Health. And that the state of Connecticut Department of Public Health has deemed these systems to be protective of the environment and of human health, as long as they're designed properly and meet all the requirements of the state public health code. This very same issue came up during a previous land use application. It's caused a lot of confusion amongst land use commissions in other towns also. I know it's kind of a tricky issue. People ask why aren't more advanced alternative treatment systems proposed? The current regulatory framework is such that the State Department of Public Health cannot and will not entertain an application for advanced or alternative treatment system for these types of systems, for these types of design flows that are regulated by the state public health department. So I wanted to say this early. I think, given what I've seen in the report that came in at 4 o'clock today, that we are going to go back probably through the town's health department to the state health department and have what I just said put in writing for the agency, so that the agency has it from the state authority having jurisdiction over these type of systems. So that's all I wanted to say. I apologize for forgetting about the subsurface detention system, and I'll turn it over to Abigail. And should I stop sharing, Abigail? I think you're muted.
I am. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. I will share my screen also. Let's see here.
What?
Is it up? Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Great. Great. Good evening. For the record, my name is Abigail Adams, registered landscape architect, owner of A2 Land Consulting LLC, New Fairfield, Connecticut. As Mike and Eric have previously mentioned, currently a large portion of the overland flow on this property is across lawn into the pond, with the manicured lawn all the way up to the pond edge. This plan proposes to remove a significant portion of that lawn area and create very large buffer planting areas. Zoom in a little bit here. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay. These areas contain a mix of both deciduous and evergreen native shrubs. And in the created wetland areas, we're proposing a very large variety of herbaceous material for enhancement both to the habitat and the water quality on site. The portion of the site closest to the developed units here would be maintained lawn area with some little areas moving through the pockets down to the created wetland edge. And then these larger pockets of native plantings here. And then we've drawn a line towards the center of the property in which we would have maintained lawn up to this area, and then the remaining portion of the property that has been disturbed will be reseeded with a no-mow mix. And this mix would only be mown in late fall and early spring, twice a year, just to keep it under control. But throughout the growing season, it would be left alone to grow naturally, and it would slow down the overland flow. It would clean any of the overland flow water before it enters into the pond. We're proposing to remove the row of small spruce along the street edge that are here now and replacing them with a row of red maple. Would be along here. And I do apologize, I have a typo here where it says 9RA, and that's supposed to be 9AR for the Acer rubrum bohol maple. So I just wanted to point that out. At the front of the property, we're proposing to remove some of the overgrown areas of vegetation here along the street, clean it up a little bit, and then provide a very nice native planting plan along the corners of Cottage and Mill for the development, with the anticipation of retaining this very large and beautiful beech tree. We are also proposing some ornamental trees at the entrance along Mill, and then maintaining an existing cherry and an existing maple, this portion of the property. We have some screening proposed along the refuse areas and utility areas of the building. We're also proposing a row of evergreen, green giant arborvitae evergreens for screening between the two developments so that this lawn area has a little bit of privacy from the development to the east. Let's see, on the northeast corner, we're proposing some additional evergreen trees to replace some of the material that's an invasive material that's being removed from this area here. We're proposing some white spruce, some green giant arborvitae, some buckeye and shadblow here, and those would be planted sporadically throughout the no-mow mix with our tighter plantings happening along the created wetland and pond edges as noted below before. See, overall, the planting plan provides an extensive variety of native plantings that are not currently present on the site. This plan provides wetland enhancement by increasing the wildlife habitat, coverage and food sources for the wildlife that has been seen throughout the neighborhood. I know there's multiple animals that have been listed, and this planting plan only enhances their food source, their coverage, etc. So we're helping, instead of lawn, they actually have somewhere where they can go rest and snuggle up next to the evergreen trees or the birds. Birds love having evergreen trees near wetland areas. And just for scope, I just want to provide some numbers to the magnitude of what we're actually proposing in terms of plantings. We're proposing 13 canopy trees, 3 ornamental trees, 24 evergreen trees, 258 shrubs, and over 1,200 herbaceous plugs and plantings. that range from tussock sedge, blue flag iris, arrow arum, pickerel weed. We have New England aster, blueberries, arrowwood viburnums, winterberry. We just have a very extensive and robust amount of planting on this plan in order to enhance the ponds that's already out there and to make this a viable, attractive, and just nice development for this parcel. And I wanted to agree with Eric where we already have this developed piece of parcel that it makes sense to utilize and enhance something that's already there and just make it, in our minds, better and enhance what's there for the wildlife as well. I think I picked up on all of the main points of the planting plan. I know between Eric, Mike, and myself, we provided a lot of information, and they also provided a lot of the things that I was going to state. So I think we've covered most of it here.
Thank you, Abigail. Madam Chair, do you have any questions for the members of this team or any member of the agency?
I'm sure we have questions. I'm just looking at the time. So, Aaron, what do we need to get through here tonight? Or I'm trying to figure out our timing. I'm happy for us to ask questions. I'm sure the agency has questions. I'm assuming the intervener is also going to want to intervene. And then, of course, we have a significant number of people waiting to speak.
Correct. So I think the commission would need to determine a time where they're comfortable allowing the presentation to continue or questions to be asked. You do, just from a housekeeping standpoint, have one other application before you this evening. And we're coming into 9 o'clock. So yes, I think it would be, clearly we all want to try to get as much on the record as we possibly can within reason. So I think maybe just a consensus from the agency members themselves. If your willingness to extend for however much longer, and then we'll try to squeeze in as much as we can within that time period.
Okay. So we have, so for the agency members, we have the applicants recap with some new information, and we can ask questions. We have a significant number of people who've been waiting very patiently, and we have the interveners who undoubtedly would like to ask questions. So we can go for another half hour. It's almost 9, and see what we can do in there. I don't know, and then probably have to continue this public hearing. Is there, everyone's still awake, right? I'm trying to text my kids, bring me coffee. But
This is for me. I'd rather hold my questions until we hear, what the public's concerns are and the interveners' concerns, and
right,
then
and
ask questions then.
okay, and I feel
I agree with that.
okay, good.
Let's hear from the interveners.
Okay, and then we can hear from the public. All right, so we have, it looks like Mr. Attorney Belcheck, Mr. Logan.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Aaron, did you pop me up? Because I'm not showing up on the video.
You have your camera on, Bill?
Or turn on your video. There you go. Maybe.
Video. Oh, start video. Sorry. There we go.
There you go.
Hello, Commissioner and fellow agency members. I'm Attorney William Bilczek with law offices at 12 Brookside Road in Madison, Connecticut. I'm here representing interveners who filed their petition this afternoon. First off, I have also George Logan, who is representing the interveners as in many capacities, and more so as a soil scientist. And he's going to be, he filed a report with the agency this afternoon as well. And I don't know if the agency has had time to review it. I know that it came in late, similar to the petition. So possibly, I don't know if you want me to make a presentation or do you want me to just ask questions so that once you get the opportunity to read the report at the next public hearing, I think that's probably the best time to make a presentation. I just have, since the experts for the applicant have raised, I have a bunch of questions to ask. So I thought maybe that would be the best way of doing that instead of making my presentation. So I'm clear when I do make my presentation in full.
That's fine.
Okay. I guess we'll go to Attorney Shansky and also to Mike Ott. The deep review that you're setting up, or the Department of Health, that's not a guarantee approval, is it? Is Mike here?
Was that for me, Bill?
You're not supposed to be falling asleep on me, Mike.
No, I wasn't asleep.
Yeah, you said that the deep review, Attorney Chancellor said the deep review is, she said it was like, they're expecting their approval. Is it a guaranteed approval?
No, it's not. So it's not deep. It's not the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. It's the State Department of Public Health.
Okay.
So the process, the normal process in any municipality is when a subsurface sewage disposal system has a daily design flow of 2,000 gallons or greater, but less than 7,500 gallons per day, therefore regulated by the Department of Public Health, the local health department or the health district, depending on the situation, reviews it first. Once they are satisfied, the local health department or the district, send it to the state health department for their review and approval. Once they approve it, then the local department can issue what's called a permit to discharge. A permit to construct, and then the system can be constructed.
Attorney Marjorie Shansky, this is administrative review by the Department of Public Health for conformity with the Public Health Code.
Now, Mike, what about, I read in the application, you're going to bring, the applicant's going to be bringing in a lot of fill. You didn't even touch that.
I don't recall saying in my stormwater management report, which is my only writing, or actually saying it verbally, that we would be, quote, bringing in a lot of fill there. In fact, I don't know whether fill material would have to be imported to the site. It's quite possible that the excavation for the foundation of the building, of course, is going to generate material, and the material on the site is suitable for construction purposes. It's sands and gravel, and that material may be used to elevate the parking lot as well as create the slope on the I think it's the east end of the building and the west end of the building. So I guess I actually don't know, Bill, whether fill will actually have to be trucked in or not.
Okay, could you find that out for the next public hearing?
Sure.
Now you mentioned that the pond You spoke to the prior owner, and the pond was dug about 30 years ago.
According to the prior owner, yes, that's my recollection of what he said, yeah.
So if it was dug 30 years ago, there should have been an application for a pond dig with the town.
Makes sense. Yep, I don't know if there was, but that's my recollection of what he said.
No, so the prior owner, you don't have any testimony from him or affidavit stating so. So the pond could have been there for 100 years for all you know.
All I do know is what the previous owner said to me. And as long as I've been around Madison, which is 1988, that pond has been there.
I agree, because that's when I remember it myself when I moved to town in 1988. Okay. So I'm just saying that, we just can't use conjecture. We have to, basically base it on facts. Now, there's recent storms. I believe it was back in October, might have been September, October. We were supposed to have the hurricane instead. We had the tropical storm. At that point in time, that pond, when I drove by it and I stopped and I took my ruler out and measured it, that pond was overflowing past the wetlands by 6 feet. And so that basically, the wetlands is about 6 feet. There's an overflow of 6 feet. And so we're 12 feet from the 50 feet distance from the edge of the pond. So am I correct with my math that it's about 38 feet at the pond when it overflows? It's closer to 38 feet towards the building, the base of the foundation.
I mean, it could be, certainly, it could be.
But on your plans are based, I believe, in September of 2021, correct? The pond elevation, it shows 3 feet pond elevation.
Yeah, I get, well, first, the pond elevation, yes, was taken in September of 20.
Oh, 20, okay, sorry. But you say there's roughly a 2 foot change in the pond height.
I think what we said is that over the time, the past 3 years or so that we've been observing this pond, we've noticed about a 2 foot fluctuation in the pond water surface elevation. In September of 20, the pond elevation on that particular day was 3.1. In November of 18, I believe, when we did the project next door, the pond elevation was 5.2, I believe.
Okay, but this past September, October, when we had the big storms, that pond was up high. The neighbors and the applicants, the interveners, said the pond was way up high. When I went there, the burnt grass from the pond, it was up above 6 feet, and it was probably about a good 4 feet higher than the pond at that level that time, which was high. So I don't believe your elevations and your position regarding the heights of the pond is quite accurate, because you're saying it was based on visual 2 years ago, or basically a year ago, in September.
Right, so I have to say, and maybe I need some help from Attorney Shansky here, I'm not quite sure about this way we're doing this right now, but Bill, since you and I have known each other forever, I'm going to try to answer your questions. So what I said, I believe, was, and this is fact, the high water, the normal high water elevation of the pond is approximately 5. That's the typical spring elevation. It's not the elevation that the pond would rise to during a significant or after a significant storm event when groundwater levels rise. But the normal high water elevation is 5, and that was identified by Richard Snarsky, the professional wetland scientist and professional soil scientist. And what what we've observed is that's about right. The normal pond surfaces change, just like horse pond surface changes. You know where that is. They change. They change with season. They change with groundwater level. They change with significant storm events. But the normal high water elevation is elevation 5, approximately elevation 5.
And I asked that question, Mike, because you're pumping all the water, basically the gravity fed the water through pipes from the parking lot into the pond. All the roof water is coming off the pond, off the roof into the pond. And I just don't, your calculations from reading, I don't know, was the storm management. You said that the parking lot was based upon, calculations were based upon pervious surfaces. The parking lot's going to be paved, isn't it?
I assumed the parking lot was going to be paved bituminous concrete. Yes.
That's the confusion. Pardon me, it's Attorney Shansky. That's the confusion that Mr. Ott and I discussed earlier in the week. The change in water, in stormwater, was predicated on using existing conditions, and that was distinguishable from the proposed condition, and there was a confusion there.
Well, I'm just reading off of what you want to do, stormwater calculations. One-off calculations are based on the parking area being pervious, as noted in developer stormwater report, page 1, paragraph 7. I don't know if that's a misprint or not.
No, it's not. It's not. It's a misunderstanding on your part. Sorry, and as well as some of the neighbors. Let me explain.
Well, but Mike, before you add up, it could be not only my misunderstanding, but the commission's. You're going to have to explain this to the agency.
I'm about to. I'll explain right now. So what I said there was that we can, for purposes of some of the hydrologic sizing criteria, Connecticut DEEP stormwater manual, we conservatively assumed that the parking area was pervious. And the reason we did that is because the particular hydrologic sizing criteria that I'm talking about is the groundwater recharge criteria. And it is dependent on the difference in impervious surface between the existing condition and the proposed. So we conservatively assumed that in the existing condition, that whole gravel parking area is pervious. Therefore, the increase in impervious surface is greater than if we had assumed it was impervious, the difference would be less. So I purposefully wrote that in the report to explain that we were being conservative in the calculation of the annual groundwater recharge volume.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you explained it because it's confusing. I'm just saying, I'm telling you.
It would be if you're not somebody who does this all the time, it would be, Bill. Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. We have lay people on the commission here, and we got lay people who are interveners, lay people who are on the public, and they read that. And now that you explained it, I'm just basically that's why I raised it.
Yeah.
No,
it's a good question.
I'm not beating you up, Mike. I'm just trying to be honest and try to get the answers out of you.
What are your questions, sir?
Shansky, let me ask the question. Please don't push me around. Okay, where does the pond water recede? Okay, if we have a pond water that's up, say 2 feet, 4 feet above its normal pond height, you're saying that there's no egress or egress from the pond in either direction. It all flows through the soil, correct?
Well, you lost me there a bit, Bill, but in the beginning you said something about, I think what you said was the pond was going to raise 2 to 4 feet in elevation. Is that what you said?
large storms.
Yeah, it can't raise that much. It just doesn't have the, it doesn't have the watershed area, the area contributing to it to cause that to raise, and the groundwater could never raise that high. That's way too high. Pond, anyway, but I want to make sure I said that, because when you said 2 to 4 feet,
The photo submitted shows the burn on the grass up 6 feet. So that means water the pond had raised up over its banks, past the wetlands onto the grass. And this is not the wetland grass, this is the lawn grass.
yeah, that can happen, absolutely, yeah.
So the level of the pond is not at its normal height of 5 feet, it can go up to 7 feet, couldn't it?
I absolutely cannot envision that pond raising 2 feet in elevation to elevation 7. Can I envision it raising 6 inches or a foot? Sure.
Mike, the burn on the grass is 6 feet.
So I think this is a matter of elevation different. You're talking, sorry, but it seems like you're saying, Attorney Belcheck, that there was water horizontally onto the lawn, right?
Horizontally and it's both. It's horizontally 6 feet, and it's with that comes also the vertical aspect of the pond.
Yes, but I don't.
So what's going to happen, Commissioner, is that they're taking all the parking lot water, putting it into the pond. They're taking the roof water, putting it into the pond. What happens when there's large rainfalls?
Well, if
Yeah.
that,
No, I understand that. I understand that. Go ahead, Mike.
so I think, Bill, what you're trying to ask is, let me repeat it back to you. In a large rain event, how much could the pond raise, and what would be the horizontal extents of the water surface of the pond when it's raised?
Correct.
Okay, so I did that calculation. If you assume that the pond, and this is a conservative assumption, if you think about this, we assume that the pond is a bathtub or it has a liner within it, and no water can infiltrate into the ground, into below the pond, through the sides of the pond. No infiltration can take place. If you take the 100-year storm event, which is I'm going by memory, 8.2 inches of rain depth in 24 hours. If you calculate the runoff for the catchment area that drains to the pond from that 8.2 inch rainfall event, and you assume absolutely no infiltration, the pond could raise 10 inches. I did that calculation.
That's 100 years.
100-year storm event. And that means, just to be clear for everyone, the 100-year storm event means a rainfall event that has a 1% chance of occurring in any 1 year. That's what that means. The annual exceedance probability for that rainfall event has a 1% chance of occurring in any 1 year.
Okay, but Mike, also, but didn't you do most of the calculations for a 25-year?
No, as is the standard of practice, the pipes, the storm sewers, are designed for the 25-year storm. Actually, the standard of practice for a small site like this is the 10-year, but I designed them for the 25. The overall analysis, the subsurface stormwater detention system, is designed for the 100-year.
Okay. Now,
I should say all the rainfall, all the design rainfall events up to the 100-year event.
okay. Now, you have like the storm drain, the separators, and now that's basically that you're separating you're not basically separating any type of, from the parking lot, any type of oil, gas, pollutants. That's just basically you're slowing down the flow of the water that's being discharged. Isn't that correct?
No, that's incorrect.
Right.
So we are going to provide some technical information on the stormwater treatment structure. We're working with the manufacturer That stormwater treatment structure removes floatables, trash and debris. It removes sediment down to a certain size. I'm not going to quote the size, but it's very, very tiny. And it removes hydrocarbons. It removes oils and other hydrocarbons that would be on the surface of the water. It's designed to do that. We will provide that information as part of the record. These things are pretty standard, Bill. And again, this particular type is on the Connecticut Department of Transportation's approved stormwater treatment structure list, and that's why we chose it.
There has to be a let's call it a maintenance program in order to clean out all those.
Absolutely. Yep. So we have a site operation and maintenance plan in the appendix E, I think, of our stormwater management design report, and it talks about the maintenance of the whole stormwater management system, including a hydrodynamic separator. It definitely requires maintenance. We have, by the way, those same stormwater treatment structures. One was put in as part of the ambulance facility when we did it. It's in the road right off the site. And one was put in right on Overbrook Road when we reconstructed it at Madison Lakes at the low point in the road. Those structures are in the roadways today.
Now, continue on questions you can answer. The leaching fields are going to be 90, you said 92 feet away from the pond, is that correct?
The primary leaching field, the closest point of the lowest row.
And the reserves are going to be in front of it.
The reserve leaching field would be closer if it was to be constructed. And I can't remember that distance, but it meets the 50-foot minimum horizontal separation distance. I should also say that typically, and this is very common, if a leaching system fails, it is typically reconstructed in place. And that would be the case here for sure, because the soil conditions are not such that a leaching field would have to be moved. So although we have to show a reserve leaching field location in a different location than the primary, it typically, if a leaching field was to fail, it would be reconstructed in place.
And how far, what's the setback on leaching fields from neighboring property?
10 feet if the top of the leaching field is below existing grade, which is the case here. 15 feet if the top is above existing grade.
And once again, you'll be basically deforesting the entire, I guess, the woodland up above in the northwest corner of the property, correct?
Yes, and again, remember, we evaluated that woodland. It is, and Eric and Abigail can speak to this. Like I said earlier, I think it's fair to say largely invasive species, a lot of tree of heaven, ailanthus.
But then again, a lot of property, a lot of fields in Connecticut have invasive species. Once again, a lot of the New England was clear cut. And so what's existing there is not what was there 100 years ago.
True.
So what's been there, could have been there 50 years, could have been there 100, we don't know. Because you said, I think most of them were 16-inch diameter, a lot of the trees. I don't know if you said it or...
I did not say that.
I haven't said it. Okay, just a quick question. You said that the catch basin, since you're now no longer going to be going out with a stormwater piping out to the corner of Mill and Cottage, so that should help the flooding condition on Cottage Road. Is that correct?
Oh, that's incorrect.
Incorrect. Why is that?
Okay, so here's why Cottage Road floods. From the intersection of Cottage and Mill, about 1,000 feet to the east, to the high point in Cottage Road, which is right at, I can't remember the street number, but there's an insurance agency business there. I think it might be number 73, I'm going by memory. It's about 1,000 feet of Cottage Road drains all the way down to the intersection with no storm drainage system in the road and little opportunity for water to leave the road. And the road's got a pretty good slope on it, although you may not notice it driving, it does. But when you get down close to Cottage Road, right in front of our site, the road flattens out. And when the road flattens out, all that water from the 1,000 feet of Cottage Road coming from the east, heading west, ponds in the pavement of Cottage Road, right in front of our site. And when it gets deep enough, and we provided these photos to town staff, when it gets deep enough, it floods ponds the full width of Cottage Road, drains to the south onto state land, like I said earlier, and some of it goes into the 2 catch basins at the intersection. Has absolutely nothing to do with our site or not connecting our storm drainage to our site.
Why are your plans, I mean, once again, I don't think this is really material, but I just said on your plans, it shows Cottage Road being 30 feet wide when it's in reality only 15 feet wide.
No, it shows it 15 feet wide. Our plans are to scale. Yeah.
I'm trying to look at the plans and, do a rough estimate. I was just wondering, so you're saying the scale is at 15 feet?
Oh yeah, it's probably 15 to 17 feet wide at most.
15 to 16, 17 feet. Okay, my final question for you, Mike, is you showed all of the calculations, all of the elevations for the pond. Were you involved with 41 Cottage Road?
I did the civil engineering, yes.
Okay. Since the pond is a big aspect of this application, why didn't you include what's taking place on the east side of the pond? The septic system and the elevations. Because the pond is getting a double whammy if this application is approved. You're getting a septic system from the north and a septic system from the east. And there's nothing mentioned in there in your calculations or in your report.
No, I think do you mean the stormwater management report?
What about the septic system?
Septic? Okay, so it's, and I'm sure you know this, Bill, from your time on the Planning and Zoning Commission. The septic system at 41 Cottage Road was designed in accordance with the requirements of the Public Health Code and was approved by the town. It did not have to go to state health because the daily design flow wasn't 2,000 gallons per day. There's actually 2 separate systems, by the way. There's one system for each building. And they were designed in accordance with the Public Health Code, approved by the Health Department and constructed, and the construction was approved. It is not practice when you go to develop an adjoining parcel to somehow analyze the wastewater disposal on that other site. It's just not done. Think about all the applications you saw as the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's just not done. Erin can speak to this. She was the time land use staff in Guilford. It's simply not.
But the thing is, if I'm chairman, I'm not saying that the chairman is going to do this. As chairman or as the commission, we can request the applicant to provide those plans and those calculations to see what the effect of basically 3 septic systems have on this particular pond.
Well, the builders, with all due respect, there's nothing to provide. The 2 systems on 41 Cottage Road were reviewed by the Health Department, approved, and their final construction was approved. And that's it in a nutshell. They met and they meet the requirements of the Public Health Code. There's no analysis to do regarding an adjoining parcel of land. It's just simply not done.
If I request it as chairman, it can be done. Okay, now, I'm done with you, Mike. I appreciate it. Okay, this is for Mr. Davison. When you did the net drag on the entire pond, the only photo I saw was the net halfway on the pond. Did you do the entire pond?
You're on mute, Mr. Davison, I think.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Yes, we did the entire pond. That was the net going across the pond was just so people could see what the net looked like, is just a photo to provide some context.
Okay, all right, that's and that's about it. That's the only questions I have at this time. George Logan, do you have questions?
Good evening. I think I'll reserve questions because I'm sure that what's going to happen is that the applicant's going to review my report a little more in detail, have the ability to respond, and it looks like there's going to be some changes in the next few days that they're going to come before the commission. And do I understand that the commission meets every 2 weeks? That's what I understand.
No, we don't meet every 2 weeks.
Okay. Some towns do.
we meet once a month.
Okay.
We meet on the first Monday of each month, unless it's a holiday. And I had said we would try to go to 9:30 because we still have other applications. But Joe, you have your hand up. And you're muted if you want to talk, because I can't.
That was accidental.
Okay. I was like, oh, look
My
at
bad.
you. So polite.
So maybe since this is going to go to the next meeting, maybe it'd be more efficient, especially with the hour. If I have any questions that have been generated from this particular presentation with the applicant, I can put them in writing and I can submit them, and maybe those can be answered at the same time.
That'd be helpful, I think.
I just don't want to take, I mean, the usual way that this thing goes is the intervener puts on our presentation so that we can substantiate the claims that are made in the intervention, but that would probably take me at least half hour. And maybe that's something I could reserve for the next time. Again, it's up to the commission what they want to hear from me tonight.
Yeah.
I'm available, I'm here.
Great. Well, I think it would be helpful to keep that to next time. It sounds like there might be more information being submitted, I guess, on both sides.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, well, I don't know. I guess what we haven't heard are comments from the public. And I suppose we could hear some of that, but I mean, we do have one other application that we need to get through tonight. So I'm not sure, commission members, agency members, do you have?
How many people in the public have their hand up? I mean, are we talking 10 people or are we talking 30 people? 30
I don't know, there's like 55 people.
I know.
There are a large number in attendance. No one was raising their hand until you requested how many have their hand raised, Lee. So yes, you know, there are a number, and I think they're based on the communication that we've received in writing. I think there's interest, and public comment portion would likely take some time to
Okay.
get through.
Well, then it seems, you know, we can't, so doing everything is not going to go well tonight, or it's not going to be probably possible tonight. So we've heard from the applicant, we've heard some questions from the intervener. We still need to hear the intervener's presentation, and we still need to hear from the public. So I guess I would suggest that we continue this to the next month, unless we want to take 5 minutes of public comment, but that, or 10 minutes maybe. I don't know. Do you guys have thoughts? I hate that everybody's been waiting. I mean, I know it's been useful to hear from everyone. So do agency members have any thoughts? Should we go 5 or 10 minutes of public comment and then wrap it up? And
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Works for me, works for me.
okay. So I guess Aaron, or John, I don't know, I guess Aaron, you're in charge of managing people.
I do have the controls here. I'm happy just to go on down the list of who is
Okay, well, we
just
can take,
happens to show up here.
Yep,
If that works.
and I'll watch the time, and then we'll get as many people in the next, 7-ish minutes.
Okay. Let's see. The first individual I have is Paula Steer. So I'll allow Paula to speak.
All right.
Okay. Hi. Does my image get to be seen by the other people?
I don't know. We can't see you.
Is that what you're requesting, Paula?
I am. Since this is a public meeting, if this was not on Zoom, we would all be in one room. We would all see each other as neighbors. And I feel that this is a disadvantage doing it on Zoom. So I'd like to show myself to be seen as I would in a public meeting.
Okay, just one moment. I'm going to have to promote you to a panelist, okay? And you'll just have to accept, and then you can come on over. Are you there, Paula?
I am, yes.
Do you have your video on?
Okay. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Hello. Hi, good evening. My name's Paula Steer. I live at 48 Deveron Drive. It is late. However, I feel that the petitioner has had an hour and 40 minutes of representation, which was the bulk of this meeting. And now we are at a late hour, but I feel like we should go until everyone's heard, or postpone it. But I would like to point out a few things regarding that this is a lot currently zoned for a single family resident. So I think this is inland and wetlands, but we do need to look that this land was intended for one family residential. Now 18 buildings with all of the drainage and changes that are being made to the neighborhood should be considered. That we're in the details and we're talking about what would help the pond and what would help the vernal pool habitat. In my opinion, I am against the project, and what would help it is to not have 18 buildings with 27 parking spaces that are paved in a neighborhood. When you turn the corner, the one home per lot on that Mill Street. I think that the design of that lot was specific when they did not rezone that lot years ago. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense on the environment. It doesn't make sense that what happens when there's no electricity. Is there a generator that is required? Who enforces the filtration system of the storm drainage? Is that the town? Are you going to go in 2 years and make sure that those filters work? I'm not an expert in this area, but where is the town's responsibility on a project this large, which has not, are there any other projects with this high density in Madison? I don't know. I don't think that some of the people speaking should be giving their recommendations to the agency as well. just my personal, I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, but I really feel like some of the folks that were experts were relaying that. So I'm against it as clearly as you can see. And if someone other than myself in the general area would like to speak, I'll let them, that's it.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I appreciate your interest, and it's good that people care about what's happening in their neighborhood.
Thank you.
Are there, we can do one more if there's somebody else who would like to speak.
You're on mute.
Sorry. A rookie move. I have Don Moore here. Don?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Great. I know it's late. I appreciate everyone's time, and my family and I want to share our family's opposition to the proposed apartment and lot development on environmental grounds. We live at 20 Edinburgh Lane, and we own 2 adjacent lots totaling 3.5 acres, the corner of which abuts the intersection of River and Mill Road, which for those who live in the area know that's very close to the proposed project. It's a couple-minute walk. On our property, on the edge that abuts River and Mill Road, is a 1/3 of an acre pond. We are prohibited on our land from any development within 100 feet of that pond, because this committee determined that it would be deleterious to the health of the pond and the environment to develop. So we don't, and in fact, we're investing to rehabilitate the area. We believe the same standard should hold to our neighbor, right down the street, which also owns a pond, and that building an apartment building is kind of very inconsistent. Also, one of the advisors called the pond at the site a stormwater pond that will suffer no adverse impact. I think that's the quote, no adverse impact, but they acknowledge the existence of fish and other life in the pond. And they don't even know the depth of the pond, having only walked in a few feet because of what they call the steep drop. So, they and we cannot say with any certainty what's in the pond. And therefore, you cannot assume that there are, quote, no adverse impact from the groundwater impacts from the development. I can say for my pond, I know very occasionally I'll see a fish jump out from the middle that maybe is a foot or longer. I would never knew existed. And I assume since it's right down the street and it's a similar pond, it's the same thing. Also, I want to state for the record that my family and I have lived by our pond for more than 20 years. And countless times we see osprey, egret, owls, hawks, ducks, geese, swans on the pond, around the pond, and seagulls. And then sometimes these birds wind up on the same birds. Apparently, they look the same, and we'll see them, and then we'll walk or drive down toward the beach, and then we'll see very similar birds on the proposed site. Admittedly, less so since that other building was built with the lights next to it, but we still do see it as recently as a week ago. And we believe, and we walked this neighborhood for 20 years, that we believe that this is a connected migratory ecosystem, and that the proposed apartment building and parking lot will disrupt it, will stress these birds, scare them away. And I think I could speak for all my neighbors here, including some that wanted to be on and couldn't for health reasons, like Carol Altieri, that, those of us who are here, part of the value of living here is the beauty of all these birds and the diversity. And we think that this project will disrupt the migratory ecosystem between the 2 ponds. It will discourage birds from flying from Reddick, maybe from the shore. I don't know, but I think it's something that should be looked at, and will stress and scare away the beautiful waterfowl and birds. and thereby perceptibly injure the value of wetlands to the community by reducing the diversity and population of bird visitors to our area, which is so important to what makes this area special. Also, I wanted to note that Mr. Davidson made the claim that this, and I don't know if it's relevant here, but since he brought it, I have to mention it, that this development is better than developing on a new site from an environmental impact basis, which is a stunningly broad statement. And to state the obvious, there are obviously more environmental friendly alternatives to the proposed project, including development of nearby underutilized sites that do not require greenfield development. And as you know, after the Lewises, as the largest landowner in this area that's a neighbor of the proposed site, I would, for one, be eager to help put together a plan, either myself or with others, to acquire the property from the developer, which would free the developer to build in an equally attractive location from a housing equity standpoint with far less environmental impact. So I only raised that because it was brought up earlier that developing anywhere else but here would have a worse environmental impact, which is, obviously not true. So not to drone on, but again, to state the obvious, we in our land will be directly impacted by the reduction in diversity of the bird population as a result of this development. And I believe that that falls under the authority of the committee to decide upon. And in addition, again, as an owner nearby with a pond, I believe what applies to our neighbor, what applies to us should apply to our neighbor. So thank you for everybody's time. And again, sorry for the long-winded discussion.
Thank you. It's very much appreciated. All right. So we'll have to continue this until the new year. We can all meet again. And we will definitely have time to accommodate all the public who would like to speak next time. So I think that's all for tonight. Are there any other issues we need to address before we close or continue the public hearing?
Nope.
No. Okay. We have to vote.
I'll
on
make
it?
a motion that we continue application 2131 to the January regular meeting.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor of continuing this application, public hearing? Great. All right.
Aye.
Well, thank you to the applicant and the interveners for
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
listening. And we will see
Thank
you
you.
next month.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have application 21-30, if they're still around. And this is
Yes, I will.
Wildwood. This is the subdivision referral to build a 3-lot subdivision.
They're coming over.
All right. Very patient.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Hi. So, I think there have been some changes to this application since you were last before us, which I guess was October. Is that right?
Yep, correct.
Okay. And I know it's late, but do you want to update us on the changes briefly?
Yes, I can handle that. Can I do a screen share?
Yes. Yes.
Do we have Nick and Chris on? Are they
Oh, hold
panelists?
on. I may,
Wanted to thank you guys too for staying up so late, and
Nick is, oh, yes, I'm sorry. I see another Nafis and Young. I'm sorry.
I think Chris Ozek is attending also.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Okay, they're coming over. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yes.
All right. So it looks like we're all here.
Okay, if we can you see this? Can you see the screen that's up that I have on the plan?
No.
I need a screen share then.
Yeah, I don't see Nick on here either. Is Nick?
I'm on under Nafis and Young.
Oh, I see. Yep. Sorry, Nick.
Yep. Hey. I say, is that did not load it in?
Can you see my screen or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Can? Okay. What basically the changes are is basically lot one right here. The house is flip flopped. You know, we have the driveway on this side. The driveway's been pushed to this side. We've added some landscape swales in this area and down here in this area. And we've straightened, the driveway originally came out a little more and now it's straightened out there. Other than that, we've pretty much maintained all the buffers. We still have the 40-foot buffer and the 10-foot landscape area also. So at that point, there's really not many changes that have been made since last time, other than those. Unless you have some other ones, Nick. Are there any other ones I missed?
No, it was the driveway, the house on lot one flipped, and the landscape and the swale in the centers.
Okay.
And we added an easement for the swales as well, for maintenance purposes.
Yeah, they're on here.
Yes. So I had questions about those. So these you have the swales in between as buffers, as it's described at least in this letter, between the residences. And it sounds, so you're trying to capture sheet flow into these swales. Is that correct?
Yeah, we were counting them as we were using them to double as the 1 inch of stormwater retention for,
I think Chris Ozick, he does a lot of work with the swales. He can describe the functionality of them just a little bit better. Chris, do you want to add some?
Yeah, so typically the idea of the swale is that you're going to catch your sheet flow off your lawn areas, potentially off your building areas, and you're able to cool the water, retain sediment, and it also acts as a passive watering system for what you want to be as a robust buffer between the properties. And it has great habitat value from an ecological standpoint.
And are they sized to capture 1 inch?
They are very much oversized to capture 1 inch. They're roughly 15 feet by 1 foot deep and 200 feet long, and 1 inch of cross impervious is roughly 350 or actually I have it on here. We have 335 cubic feet is 1 inch, and each of these swales can hold at a maximum 6,000. So I mean, even if they were only using a tenth of it for capture purposes, it's still almost double what we need.
I'm I don't want to hog all the questions. I just had a few more questions for the other agency members. So, and they're going to be planted. So we have the buffers between the residences, and then you have this buffer along the driveway, and somehow, which I feel is very nicely optimistic, you're going to have the different owners maintain this. Is this going to be in the deed?
It will be in the deed, correct, yeah. So there's going to be all the gardens that are on the individual properties will be up to the individual property owners to maintain. And then, so the only shared part is the garden that's on the driveway.
And if I may say, the easement that is there is only for the purposes of, you know, if lot 1 doesn't maintain the property, then that allows lot 2 to go on and clean up anything that may have happened. It's, yeah. So they actually go a little bit past the edge of the thing for that purpose.
So you're saying that these swales between the residences don't have a maintenance plan, that they're supposed to function as stormwater treatment, but they don't have a maintenance plan, and the residents can do whatever they want with them?
No.
Wouldn't they just fill them in and not, I mean, instead of having this dip in your property, wouldn't they want to just fill that in and make it smooth?
No.
What is going to stop them from doing that?
Well, if you look at it, the dip you're talking about, it's only about a foot deep, spread out over about 30 feet wide. So it's almost, it's not going to be like a big swale in the middle of between yards. It's kind of a big flat open area that'll be filled with vegetation. And there's cross easements across both properties. So if one of the neighbors tries to do something, the other neighbor has the right to say something or to maintain it on the other side. If that makes sense to you.
Well,
so this is a more progressive way to take care of your runoff, your stormwater runoff.
I understand that. I mean, I think it's lovely in theory. I'm trying to think in practice what it actually ends up being with pretty disparate people buying these properties and then now having to interact to some extent or not in maintaining this.
Yeah, the plantings are designed still to be aesthetic. So, you know, when I was thinking about this, there's a fair amount of evergreens in there. Each of the plants has a value that individual residents can relate to. And the goal would be to educate the folks about what they have there and the values that provides for them. But ultimately, they want to have a robust buffer, not full of invasives, that are providing screening between their properties. You know, so that when the one's on the back porch, not seeing somebody else on the pool or vice versa. And then, you know, as you go around the rest of the property, a lot of the plants are in groupings, thickets, so that they're easily identifiable. When you take and put too many plants together that are individuals, it sometimes can look weedy. And when you're massing these plants, even native plants together, it looks like a design or intentional controlled nature. And so you can still have the benefits of the native plants with the aesthetics of some sort of organized nature. And that was sort of the thinking that we were trying to employ to bring in the best of both worlds to this. I don't know if that helps. But you know, Mike has talked to me about that there would be a deed, you know, requirement, and that I would be going and meeting with the homeowners and making sure that the work is maintained for 3 years. And that we submit a report to you guys saying everything's doing well, or this is not working and we've changed this out. But, you know, the goal is to keep all native plantings in there and to shade those swale areas, because that's how you get the best amount of habitat happening. A sunny swale is not a great swale.
Halo, if I may, just from a staff suggestion for subdivision and any concerns as far as stormwater maintenance running and responsibility running with the residents, the property owners. I think the record subdivision map that is before you shows a swale maintenance. The record subdivision map could probably be clarified to show that these are stormwater swales and what these stormwater swales should be accounting for as far as impervious surface. Are these roof leaders tying into this? What footing drains? What specifically are you, I assume if you're doing footing drains, they're going out beyond the slope towards the wetland. But what specifically, and having some calculations associated with that, and documenting that on the record subdivision map, that those are sized accordingly for the development of the two adjacent parcels, and that would make this swale maintenance easement, I think, a little clearer as far as what the intent of that swale is. If it is truly for stormwater management, then it needs to be shown that it's designed to function as one, and be maintained as one. And then part of the subdivision plan is that maintenance, the approval is that maintenance of the stormwater areas. And as all three of these parcels are within the 100-foot upland review, they could all then be subject to regulated activity permits through the agency, where you'll have an additional opportunity to review the site development plans as well. But at least we're requiring some type of easements to be filed, and maintenance responsibilities. Those should be depicted clearly up front before the subdivision itself would be approved.
I agree.
Yeah, I that would be good.
But that's not for approval for wetlands though, correct?
Well, I think in the wetlands report, I think you have some options. You could include that as you are to provide a report to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So as part of your action, you can make those recommendations that be included on the record subdivision. And so then that gives the applicant an opportunity to address that, show that everything is sized appropriate, you know, what they're tying into these swales, and that they're sized appropriately, and the size of the easement areas are sufficient. And then when these individual site plans come back to you as regulated activities, you will see more detail in those easement areas. From a staff standpoint, did anyone explore like infiltrators or anything like that on individual sites as opposed to shared swales in between the properties? I think that's another option as well.
We thought about it, but it seemed if we were making, you know, a swale that can hold up to 6,000 cubic feet of water, the extra expense of putting in a bunch of stormwater infiltrators and then running the overflow pipe out to that swale anyway seemed unnecessary.
Yeah, and also when you run infiltrators, you can't put all the vegetation in that area either. So if we did that, that area have to be left blank. And I know it's been the developers' desires to make this place look pretty with a lot of landscaping. So that's what he's been trying to push with all this.
You have a significant lawn areas shown for clearing that could accommodate underground storage as well.
I mean, I think what our objective is to, get the water to, go back into the groundwater. Without running off into the, beyond that 40-foot buffer.
Okay, well,
I mean, a lot of these swales, I think a lot of these swales, maybe Chris can explain it a little bit better, but, and maybe we can clarify it a lot more, like Aaron had said, through documentation and deeds and on the actual site development plan.
Yeah.
But, we really need to get the footprint of the home, the floor plan of each home finalized, in order to figure out where the leaders are going to be going and how those get diverted over into the swales in order for that to, be documented. It's, I've already done a floor plan for one home and it's not that hard to accomplish. So, we planned on actually having that documentation during the building permit process.
I think you could at least, you have a proposed site, a potential lot development plan. So I think if you use those proposed footprints, you could size according to those proposals. So at least verifying that the swales accommodate that.
I do want to point out that I do have the calculations on the plan right now.
On the lot development plan?
Yes, they're in the upper corner next to the location map, right next to the test pit data. They're the ones in the boxes with retention, infiltration, lot 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
It's basically each house has the same amount of square footage. So each house is 4,018 square foot of impervious. Since the driveways are gravel, they don't count towards impervious. The swale between lot 1 and 2 is 200 feet long, 30 feet wide, a foot deep. That's 6,000 cubic feet of water. As I stated, 4,800 square feet divided by 12 is 335. If you use if only a tenth of that swale holds the water, that's still almost double what's required.
And you're not doing a 4,000 square foot footprint.
That's the, yeah. Oh, sorry. That 4,000 square feet also includes the pool. My apologies. As the pool would obviously be impervious as well.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. The plans, and this is taking a step back, the plans, and maybe this will be discussed later on the individual lots, but they're consistently showing like the 40 and 50 foot upland review lines. Is there a reason for that? I mean, these aren't tidal wetlands, these are inland wetlands, correct?
Yes.
And so there would be a 100-foot line that we should see on these documents somewhere as well, correct? Maybe I'm confused and I'm just missing it, but I see the focus being put on the 50-foot line, and I would like to see where the 100-foot line is as well. Because it seems like there's, and I can't really tell without the line plotted, there's a certain amount of activity within that 100-foot upland. Or maybe there's a reason I'm not seeing why it's not on there. So I mean,
the entire site, Bob, is essentially 100 foot with the development sandwiched between the two of them. So
right, I see that, but I would love to see the 100-foot line because it looks like it's encroaching upon the septic leaching fields and it's awful close. I mean, I can't really tell how close it is. Part of the driveways into the houses are certainly in there. I don't know if if the committee doesn't think it's necessary, then, I'll have to do without it. But I just don't understand. It seems to take the focus upon our total, where our responsibilities lie within the total boundary, as opposed to just, showing half of it. I think it should be a pretty simple change, right, sir?
Yeah, we could easily add that on. That's not but it's basically just a little sliver right down the center is what it comes down to.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's so you could add it, but essentially this whole thing is in the upland review.
Yeah, maybe all, but maybe the driveway for lot one is about, that's about it. You know, it's just like a slight sliver that would not be within the 100-foot buffer or the upland review area.
I just think it should be documented on there. I really do. And just for point of clarification, the driveway is not there now, correct? Or is it?
No, there's nothing there now.
It's vacant land right now.
No development on site yet, correct?
Nope, completely vacant.
And how's the grade? I mean, the grade, I'm trying to read the elevations there, and I'm sorry, I'm a little bit more of a layman than the rest of you, but is it a gently sloping grade, or are we talking more of a steeper grade?
It's pretty gentle.
Okay, thank you.
The questions for the applicant. And this is a subdivision referral. So yes, we can decide what kind of report you want to send to planning and zoning.
It seems like we go through this every meeting. Do we have to write a letter, or, I mean, what's the nature of our report? Because I think in previous situations, haven't our meeting minutes served as a report?
Sometimes, but for the Longshore subdivision, we actually wrote a letter.
Right.
I think it depends. I think we have the option to do the letter or minutes. But if we want to address, if there's specific things we want to address, we could do a short letter to planning and zoning.
Sure. Just to reiterate with respect to the inland wetlands, there is in the subdivision, there is a requirement of an open space dedication with each subdivision application of 10% open space. And just to clarify, the applicant has proposed a fee in lieu of dedicated open space. So they are looking to pay the 10% of the current market value of the property as their open space set aside.
Right. That was another question I had. So is that the applicant's choice?
It's the planning and zoning. I think the Inland Wetlands Commission could clearly make a recommendation. The Planning and Zoning Commission would look, especially if there's an area that could be contiguous with existing open space, where that open space on this particular parcel would be beneficial. However, there is most of the open areas on this property are already inland wetlands and regulated areas, and they're isolated from other open space areas, and the town doesn't necessarily see the value in maintaining those areas, and in that case would prefer the fee in lieu to put towards property that is more desirable for open space.
Right. Okay. Are there other questions? So the buffer, I guess I'm trying to visualize this buffer. So this other buffer.
We have a landscape plan if you'd like to see the landscape plan.
Well, I think it's on the last page, right?
Yeah.
So I've seen it so this buffer, you have it on, it's 10 feet. So you're saying that the plantings are 40 feet from the wetland line.
Correct. And then they come out, and then the garden would go from 40 to 50 feet. And then that's where the driveway would start.
So the driveway starts at 50 feet.
Correct.
And this garden is not, it's not really a garden. This is, well, okay, so you said you had some edible
It's all native plants,
native plants.
but it's all designed to look like sort of a naturalized landscape barrier buffer, so that it's very deliberate, but it's all native plants. So that won't be easy for somebody to say, oh, I thought that was a weed, or hey, I want to open up a U here. No, these are all plants that are part of the sort of ring of the properties. And we would encourage the homeowners to actually build on that inwards towards their property to create even more of a buffer. It would be much more aesthetically interesting.
We will be giving the homeowners, and we're going to live there also, a landscape package. So for their own individual homes, Chris will be working with each homeowner or with me in coming up with an actual landscape design for the individual properties. But it'll be included in a budget. It'll be a line item essentially. So, and we will be encouraging them to do more vegetative work, a lot more plantings. It's just, we just don't feel it's necessary for this application. Because it's on their individual properties.
Right.
Yep.
Excuse me, Kayla, Mike, did you indicate that the property owners are sharing maintenance responsibility of the vegetation along the driveway?
So there is one letter specifically for the 40-foot upland. How did I write it? Hold on a second.
Well, I'm just concerned that you have an easement along the driveway for access and maintenance along the driveway that will have
Correct.
specific language in the deeds and on the record subdivision map, and that does not include this landscape planting area. So if there are going to be rights for the adjacent properties to maintain that landscape, then there needs to be language in the easement for that as well.
Sure.
And the right of way would have to extend, that easement area would have to extend to incorporate that landscape buffer to ensure that maintenance.
Yeah, definitely. So if you read the Wildwood Ave 40-foot buffer garden upland review management plan, that's a very long-winded title, but it really highlights how lot 2 and 3 share the maintenance of that garden and how that garden is looked after in the first 3 years and reported back to inland and wetlands. You guys did ask us for a maintenance plan. So that's really, showing you guys, the dedication to trying to make sure that you guys know that it will be looked after.
Okay, so you'll need to extend and have that reflected on the record subdivision
Sure.
map to include those rights.
Yes.
Okay, that I just picked up on that. Sorry for missing that.
Yeah. Okay, good. Because I guess that was where I was going as well, is.
But once that easement there stops, everybody owns every individual lot owns their own buffer on the wetland side.
You're going to
In the
have
individual houses and the wetlands, not between each individual house.
Right. Do you want
Sort
to
of like
clarify that again?
three different ways of buffers that were developed.
Oh, I see. So you're talking about at the back of the houses.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. So that is not included in your letter. So you're saying that's just idealized. This is
No. It is included in the letter. So that will also be maintained and reviewed with a report to the inland and wetlands.
Okay,
For-
the driveway buffer and these kind of backyard buffers
Right.
and the swale.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, the plantings as drawn.
Right. Now, we didn't talk about a maintenance plan for the swales until about a week ago, when Aaron had brought it up. We need to include that in the actual letter that is so it wouldn't be, it can't be in this Wildwood Ave 40-foot buffer garden upland review management plan, because there's going to be a big portion of it that's outside of the 100-foot review area. So that will be in the deed, but an individual maintenance plan for those swale buffers also. Does that make sense?
Maybe.
Have you written that maintenance plan?
Well, you only asked for the easement. You didn't really ask for a maintenance plan, so we put the easement in there, and to be honest with you, I didn't even think of Chris and I have talked about this, and I think the biggest thing that we've discussed is that, swales have been used for a long time, but they're kind of newer. They're used more in, I think, probably urban environments. It's such a big swale that we just don't want to I want to explain it in a way that simplifies like how it's going to work, right? And not complicate it or hold up this process. We were even scared to actually include this in the application in the beginning, because it's just kind of hard to explain, but it's something that
there is a need to address stormwater as part of the subdivision. So I think it could be a simple plan as far as, what's done yearly or quarterly or monthly or after large storm events, and, removal of invasives, basic language, I think. And is that something, Chris, that you're able to
Oh yeah, that's not
draft?
Yeah, I'll just say that. So this is best practice in a number of towns and areas around Connecticut. So around Lake Candlewood, New Fairfield is where I'm from originally. They're now requiring everybody to build swales in their yards to capture the first inch of stormwater. It's just it's a concept that has gone back eons, where they were essentially ditches to collect the stormwater, but it also helped with irrigation and things like that. So I was working with Mike because we want to do best practices. He wants to get people that are connected to nature, people that are going to appreciate the site and the place. And by building things like this that are more sensitive to the landscape, I think we'll be able to, be more connected with nature. So it's an ideal. It's not, I don't work on projects that aren't connected environmentally to the land. It doesn't, I'm at a point in my life where, this is the important good work. I appreciate you guys considering it.
Well, I think swales are great. I think sometimes people are not often maybe as appreciative as that. And so I think all we would want to see, and I guess this is what Aaron's getting at, is that there's some kind of administrative language and some proper language, just to alert the people Because for a lot of people, having swales as stormwater management is not going to be a usual thing. I think it'd be great if it becomes much more of a word that people are like, of course, look at my swale, it's beautiful. But I don't think we're quite there. And so you know, in order for it to work, and, you know, for future landowners way into the future, I just think, you know, making sure that we have language there acknowledging maintenance plans, because plants are going to grow and change, and for swale to function properly, you know, it'll need to have some maintenance to some extent. So
Yeah, it's really anything is going to really need maintenance.
Yeah.
This will actually need less maintenance than like a French drain system or a.
of course, but it still needs something. I mean, it just still needs some language to accompany it, and particularly to enforce owners to do what they should do.
Yeah, upfront expectations is always a winning strategy. So if they know that when they're buying it, they opt in or opt out.
Yeah, and yes, and if this is on the deed, it's on the plans, then everybody knows from the get-go that this is what is supposed to be.
And we can include everything that you just said, we can include.
So Joe had a question. He said, is it a hybrid swale / rain garden?
So the it's like a giant rain garden, but the water will be eventually moving out of it into the wetland, but it only if there's a extreme event. There typically we put gravel in at the base to encourage infiltration, but we're not doing large volumes of gravel in this particular swale to encourage the vegetation. There's not really a need for it. If you had a smaller area that you were trying to accommodate a large amount of water, you might do it in that way.
All right. Are there any other? So again, this is for referral. These are all, we can decide what we want to put into our recommendation letter, whatever we do for planning and zoning. Are there other questions for the applicant on this? So it's a 3-lot subdivision, pretty much all in the regulated activity area.
No questions.
No questions. Everybody's like, let's go to bed. It's so late. Okay. All right. Well, then so I guess with what we've been saying or discussing about the easements and the maintenance plan and the buffers and swales is something that maybe we should put into a short paragraph for planning and zoning. Or Aaron and John, do you think it's sufficient just to have our minutes?
I think you could, and John, you can chime in as well. I think just bullet points even of what you're, you know, if it's a favorable recommendation, you know, for the subdivision, with the request that the applicant, you know, relabel the swales as stormwater swales, and submit a stormwater maintenance plan for the swales. And I think those are things that can then be submitted to the Planning and Zoning Commission to be incorporated into the records of the division.
Okay. Does that sound okay with agency members?
Yes, agreed.
All right. Is this something we vote on? I never remember if we vote on subdivision. I remember we do vote on them.
Yes.
For a while we were not supposed to. All right. Well, I'll entertain a motion from somebody who's awake.
So I'll make a motion. So this is 2130.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll make a motion, we approve application 2130 for a 3-lot subdivision with comments where we minimize or we urge the minimizing of runoff to the wetlands. And I'll ask others to chime in.
Well, okay, I think we wanted to relabel the swales as stormwater swales
Mhm.
and make sure there's a maintenance plan associated with them.
Correct.
I'll second it.
Excellent. Right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right. Well, thank you. I imagine we'll be seeing you all some other point in time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time and thanks for staying up so late.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have our section 13s. No, we put those at
Oh, we
the,
got some receipts.
we had receipts. And as you probably saw from my email, this is, this came up at our last meeting and, we got clarification. And so all the applications are received, all new applications that are received within 24 hours of today, business days, are received tonight. So we have, by default, by regulation, we, 53, application 21-34, 21-36, and 21-38 have all been received. That being said, so we have our 65 days, but this is kind of going to be our new improved going forward is if we see an application where we might want a site walk or where we suspect there may be a public hearing or other public interest or significant activity, we want to kind of identify those, like, especially if we want to do a site walk or we see a public hearing, something where we need to schedule. Or, as I also mentioned, if we want comment from the Conservation Commission, like Summerhill, I haven't looked at that one as in much detail, but we often get their comments for subdivisions, especially subdivisions with open space. So I guess we can, hopefully you had a chance to kind of look through these. And so does anybody see out of these 3 that were received, any need for a site walk? Let's start there.
Well, I apologize. I didn't look at them ahead of the meeting, so I should have.
That's okay. I actually, it's been a busy day. I didn't, I guess, my only thing would be with the Summerhill, we might want to ask Conservation to do a letter. I guess if we look at this, I don't know, John, is this an application, did you see any of these that might warrant a sidewalk?
Okay, look, this is the date of receiving the application. So this basically starts the clock. You have 65 days to hear this. So next month, if you're interviewing the applicants, and at that time you decide you want to take a site walk, you can do that. Right now, I think that's kind of what we did with the last, with the 35 cottage. We had a 45-minute meeting, and then we decided it was a significant activity, so we had a public hearing. So really, without getting too caught up into it, personally, I think that this really starts the clock for the 65 days.
Right.
You know, and if this was, a major municipal project, you'd probably be a significant activity without even looking at it. You'd be in the public interest, and you'd probably want to have a public hearing. These are probably, they're replacing a deck. The River Edge Farm, I've done some preview on all of these. I don't really think that there's much of an activity there. And the only thing would be the subdivision, 3-lot subdivision. That's one that you might want to look at before you make I don't think you have to make that now.
Okay.
And Aaron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think really they can, at next, on January 3rd, when you get a presentation, if you think that you want to take a site walk or there's something that you haven't realized, you can make that,
Sure.
you can make that point then.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I think we'll definitely want to look at the subdivision and okay. So great. Those are received without us doing anything. All right, we'll move right along. Section 13s, those are also done.
They're all done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give you a little bit of Randy Drive. You actually had a quick look at it last month, and this is when we got into this whole story about. Excuse me. Way past my bedtime. But so I think we talked about Randy Drive a little bit. I had a meeting 2 or 3 times with Joe Wren, the project designer, the professional engineer, had him move the well back out of the 100-foot, away from the 100-foot area. Got everything, all the improvements are beyond the 100-foot upland review area at this point. The only thing, and I briefly and I did talk to KLO a little bit about that, and we sort of looked at that. There's a little limited amount of clearing. Just barely within probably 90 feet or 93 feet away from the wetland. It's up on a flat slope, does slope away from that. I got the design professional engineer to not only put a E&S structure around the perimeter, but also a wood chip berm. So I'm comfortable that all the activity is beyond the 100-foot, including the well, except just a little bit of clearing on each side of the property in the back for just a lawn area. That's that one. 56 Tuxus is a modification of your approval. They're going to add a little front entry porch in the front, which is actually nestled between the existing house and the garage. There's no impact on the wetlands behind the house at all. And what was approved was the rehabilitation and renovation of a screen porch, of a porch, it was an enclosed porch in the back. And it was 41.7 feet from the wetlands. They're going to remove that because it was beyond repair. And they're going to actually move it another 6 feet away from the wetlands and build it there. So, I mean, that's really the modification. So that was 56 Tuxus. And that's the one that we did take a site walk on. And the other one is Green Hill Road. At the last meeting, the agency directed me to approve the removal of the wall and 3 small trees. I think 2 of the 3 trees are beyond the 100-foot. 1 tree and a portion of the wall is within the 100 feet, but it's just removing the farm wall and trimming those trees, and they're going to replant, in that area. So if you recall, that's what we talked about last month.
Yeah,
and that's it.
That's great.
You can go home.
Well, almost
Almost.
there.
Right.
Patriots.
Minutes.
Minutes.
I looked over the minutes. It's entirely possible that I missed something. But I didn't see anything that jumped out at me.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Okay,
Me either.
excellent. Okay. Well, I will take a motion on the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of November 1st, 2021 meeting.
I'll second it.
Excellent. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I have no remarks, except hopefully it'll be shorter in January.
I'm not.
I have only about 4 or 5 remarks that I would like to make, but I'm gonna edit down to one. And I heard from Dave Newton this week. As you all see, he's not here, and he has decided and wishes not to be reappointed. His term is up January 1st, 22, and he's asked me to inform the Board of Selectmen that he's no longer available to serve. So we lost 2 really good members here in
All right.
the last couple of months.
So we have 2 vacancies, Tom Paul and Dave Newton.
Yeah, and 3 vacancies for alternates. So
Or advertising, or I mean, how's that working as far as trying to replace them?
well, the BOS probably should get a hold of the Democrat and town committees who need to appoint, somebody or throw in some names, and then the Board of Selectmen will, decide if they can appoint them or not. But
I think Dave was a Republican and Tom Paul was unaffiliated.
yeah.
Okay.
And the alternates probably are what, half and half too? Or
Yeah, but I notified them today, so I'll keep you guys up to date as to what that's going. But yeah, I noticed that there's no alternates and there's 2 regulars that are vacant.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, it is a shame.
Well, what is the quorum? How many are we getting close to being in jeopardy not having a quorum?
You've got 7. You've got 7. 7 regulars and 3 alternates.
Yeah, but how many do we actually have?
5.
5.
So if 2 people don't show up, then we're not going to have a meeting.
Right.
That's right.
That's the urgency.
Yeah, so we need more people.
What's the best way? I'm trying to remember how I got on this. I think I responded to an ad in the paper for looking for volunteers. I'm not sure about that, but I'm wondering, I mean, is that like an agenda item for the various town committee, the Democratic Town Committee, or?
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah.
I had somebody contact me at the end of last week, and I haven't had a chance to reach out yet, but they asked me how what would they have to do to get on the wetlands agency. So I won't drop the ball tomorrow. I was a little busy today, but I'll reach out to that person.
Well, and tell your friends and family.
I was gonna say, if he or she knows anybody. Bring their friends, right?
Yeah.
Well, the good news is we had 100% turnout tonight.
Yeah.
We only have 5, right?
Yeah.
I know. But,
Had we known.
wow. Yeah, that is a shame. That is a shame. Okay. Well, those are interesting remarks, John. Thank you. All right. So we have one more item or motion someone wants to make.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I second.
All right. All in favor?
Could have gone to 11 o'clock and set a record.
No, I think we're good.
I think they've gone to 12 before. When
Oh,
they're
no.
really contested.
You can go.
We don't want to go there.
You can go to 12:30.
Oh my
No,
God.
to 11:30, but you can vote to go beyond it.
Yeah.
And I don't really hope we don't go there, you know?
No, we're gonna keep everything. This is way late, so we'll try to go.
This is
we'll
way-
get
this is-
anchored
this is very
earlier.
way late.
That's a record. There's no glory in beating.
Right.
All right. Well, I don't see you guys before.
See you tomorrow afternoon, Aaron.
See you
Oh,
next year.
nice try.
Well,
Bye.
anyway,
Everybody have good holidays.
Good night.
happy holidays.
Happy
Yeah,
holidays.
Bye.
Happy holidays.